Hello and welcome back to episode 5 of the podcast at the card table, in which we discuss creation, practice, performance and history with the greatest minds in magic. If you're tuned in on YouTube, you will be watching an almost unedited video podcast of myself and the guest talking, but if you are tuned in on Apple or Spotify, you will be listening to a fine-tuned version that should be a lot audibly smoother. Either way, you're getting the same content and I hope you guys enjoy it. Today's guest is one of London's busiest working magicians, most widely known for his unique blend of magic, mentalism, and the supernatural, combining tricks with terrifying theatrics. Demonstrated in his expertly crafted series, Tackling Terrifying Taboos, in which he delves into the secrets behind creating an immersive, scary, and memorable show, as well as hosting Alakazams' podcast Desert Island Tricks, stranding the top names in magic on an imaginary island, is, of course, the terrifyingly talented Jamie Daws. How are we doing, Jamie? You well?
Hello, very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's weird being this side of the podcast.
Yeah, completely flip the tables. This is one thing, having mentioned before doing podcasts in the past, being thrown onto the other side of the table, having questions asked is terrifying. So yeah, thank you for hopping on and doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Like I say, I'm always wary being on the other side because when you're in your position, there's like a set structure and you know exactly where it's going to go. And then when you're on the other side, you're not quite sure what's going to happen. So, but yeah, I'm really excited. I've listened to the beginning of one of these because I wasn't aware. But some of the names that you've had on,
fell asleep.
No, I think I'm a massive podcast fan. That's the problem. I'm a huge podcaster. So it was in the pandemic I got into them. So now, like if I'm on a car journey or going for a walk, I will never listen to music really anymore. I've just got a set list of podcasts that I listen to. So this is just another one that I get to add, which it'll be good for my long journeys.
Perfect. Adding it to the mix of ever expanding. I find it so difficult to keep with one podcast. I'm so far behind on so many podcasts because I'm constantly bouncing between different things. But listening to them on 1.5 times speed, game changer.
Yep.
Absolute game changer. Yep. Blasting through podcasts like there's no tomorrow. You get used to it eventually as well.
Unless they've got a really thick Scottish accent, then when it's on 1.5, it gets very confusing very quickly.
Got it on 0.8 so you can understand what's being said.
Well, when I edit the podcast, I'm not sure because you edit yours, obviously. Yeah. When we edit the podcast, I edit it on plus 40%. So as I'm editing it, it really is just as we're going along, and I'm trying to make really strategic cuts halfway through. So yeah, it's a good little technique to speed it up, I think.
I've never thought about doing it in the editing process, but I'm so meticulous with the edit. Like, I think the last edit had 1,300 cuts in it of just little tiny breaths and pauses and ums and ahs that I just pulled out. So I was like, that's the level of perfection I'm striving for with these, which is why they're once every 2 weeks and not once every week. So I do not have the time to do that.
Yeah, let's up it to once a week and see how you get on with those 1,300 cuts then.
It's also why the YouTube edits are always half an hour longer than the audio ones. So if anybody's looking to listen to these slightly faster, listen to the ones on Apple and Spotify because they're way quicker. They're well edited.
Well, you're better than me. There's no way I'm doing 1,300 cuts. I've got about 13 cuts and that's it.
I've got far too much spare time on my hand, apparently. That's what it is. Well, let's get to know you super quick in our sort of player profile, which is just a series of quickfire questions. Quickfire in inverted brackets, because they're never quickfire. But it's a series of questions just to get to know you super quickly. And the first one is, what is your favourite sleight? Obviously, being into sort of mentalism and bizarre magic, this doesn't necessarily have to be a card sleight, which is what quite a lot of people have sort of taken that question as. This could be something mentalism related. It could be some sort of prop movement. It's entirely up to you. What is your favourite sleight?
So, if I was going to go for, I haven't really done cards for years. At the beginning of my career, I did heavy cards. So I loved cards. To practice it in terms of a card sleight, the diagonal palm shift, There's something incredibly pleasing about the way it just conforms into your palm, rather. But then, other than that, if I was to do a mentalism sleight, one that I use often would probably just be a standard billet switch, which obviously everyone's who does mentalism has some sort of billet switch. So generally not the most exciting answer there, but yeah, just some form of billet peak or billet switch, really.
Do you have a particular billet switch that you see yourself going back to, or is it something that you devise yourself?
No, so I did the only sort of billet-esque thing that I've ever developed was something called pocket seance, which was although in context of that product it is something for spooky stuff, but it's not. It's generally just a billet technique, so it's a way to have two pieces of information hidden on one billet. So I've used that quite a lot in different contexts because it allows you to not only force something, which I think's kind of cool, but switch something if you need to as well. So I think that is a really interesting technique. Other people have come up with similar versions of it as well over the years, but generally just anything that gets the job done. I'm really not precious. Just get that billet switched. Who cares how you do it? Just make sure you do it however you can in the moments. I tend to favor misdirection more because I am I'm very much into the performance of stuff, as you probably gathered. So even when I'm in like a restaurant situation, so I have over the past sort of 7 years, I've done regular restaurant work. At the height of it, which was just before the pandemic, I was doing 3 restaurants a week, which was just a nightmare on top of a normal job as well. And yeah, I did that for years. And in those situations, you have so much misdirection and so much cover. A billet switch in those situations, you do not need to worry about technique at all. You could quite literally just show it to them, put it into your pocket and grab another one out, and they just won't notice what's going on because you've got so much cover. So yeah, for me, any sort of billet peak or billet switch, I said billet peak twice, doesn't really matter. Whatever you want to do.
Something so satisfying as well about openly switching things. Obviously, being a card guy myself, open deck switches is just so much fun because you get that satisfaction of knowing that you've gotten away with something so non-discreet but under their noses. So any way that you can do that with billets and things like that's just so satisfying.
Yeah, I remember years ago being at Davenport's in London, the first time that someone performed Blizzard by Dean Dillon. And there's 2 moments of that trick. Number one is when the trick happens and you're like, what on earth's happening? The fact that they hand you the deck of cards that's now blank is just mind-blowing. But then they show you how it happened, and there's a moment of absolute despair.
There's no way.
That didn't happen. Yeah. Right, now show me how it really happened. But those sorts of moments where someone gets away with something so overtly, I'm very much a fan of bold methods, and I really enjoy it. Bold methods in the stage show that that I put together a few years ago, that Pete helped me with. We've got a really bold moment in that show, which we had to change last year. But in essence, I have a whistle on. I take the whistle off, I hang it on a hook on a board, and then a little bit later on, I talk about the ghosts and how they move things. And then when I look down, I'm wearing the whistle again. And when I look over at the board, it's not there anymore. And method-wise, I'm not sure if we're allowed to talk method on your podcast.
We can code methods, but with it being a publicly open forum, it's a little iffy as to whether we disclose things.
So suffice to say, something quite openly moved. Okay. Very much without cover. But the interesting thing was, because something else was happening on the stage, no one saw it. And we had quite a few magicians come to the evening, and that ended up being their favorite moment of the show. And then when you tell them what happened and they didn't see it, it absolutely just blows them away. So
no way.
Yeah, no way. So yeah, like you said, those like bold deck switches and stuff, they're the best. They're so much fun to do.
It's like Charlie Caper and his bow tie, man.
Yeah,
Like, oh my goodness, seeing that at Edinburgh Fringe, I was like, there's no way this is happening. I was like, I'm going to watch it so intently, and still got us every time. I was like, my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah,
Those
it's
are the
great.
best
So
moments.
good.
Best moments. Yeah, they're good fun. So yeah, I can't really give you more of an exciting answer than that. So I don't know if that was quick fire or moderately slow.
That was relatively quick fire in comparison to most of them. So we're doing well so far.
Good.
Editor Corey here. As you can tell by the length of this episode, nothing else in the episode was remotely quickfire other than this question. Do you have a particular favourite plot, whether it just be in Magic in general, whether it's something you do, or whether it's something that you enjoy watching? Is there anything in particular that you enjoy?
So I'm massively into PK plots. Now, when I say PK, not necessarily PK in terms of moving things with your mind, although I do like that. But very much the concept of like PK touches or PK experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm very obsessed at the moment with a lot of the tricks that I'm working on, and even the show and stuff like that. This idea of giving the audience an experience that they can't explain. So the idea, so I'm working on a trick at the moment that's based on this idea between Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare, and the idea that Shakespeare may have been Christopher Marlowe. So Christopher Marlowe was killed one night, and 2 weeks later is the first public publishing of a Shakespeare work. And there's many similarities between the texts. Now, between us, there's a substantial amount of evidence that they're not the same person. However, there's just that conspiracy around it. The fact that Christopher Marlowe was a spy, and supposedly it was well documented at the time. And the people that were around him when he died were government officials. So there's so many like questions happening. So just from that, this idea of Shakespeare writing something down, but really in the back of his head, he's got Marlowe's eyes looking through his own. So that was like the concept. So the idea from then would be to have someone read a book, and as they're reading it, they're actually reading something that someone else is seeing. So it's almost like they're seeing through someone else's eyes, which is very much that sort of PK weirdy idea. But 100% PK touches has been my sort of closing trick for easily 8 years now. So I've explored so many different versions of it, from voices to them holding things. There's a great Matt Mello trick where they hold an object. So you basically pretend to put something in someone's hand openly, but there's nothing there. And then you give someone else an object and they are feeling it openly. And then this person with the hand closed starts to feel something, even though there was nothing in the hand. And they end up describing exactly what that other person has. And then when they open up the hand, of course, there's nothing in there, but everyone else has seen it happen. So
good.
All of those sorts of weedy dual reality plots. I'm a huge fan of dual reality in close up as well. I know loads of that's going to trigger so many visions. But I love the idea of dual reality close up, and I think it's very much an underutilized tool. And I think that so many people are scared of it, especially PK touches. People are really worried about PK touches, but I think when you have literally performed it tens of thousands of times, which is just ridiculous, there's very little that can go wrong if you get everything down tight. And you know the moments and you know the beats. So for me, anything sort of PK or dual reality, all of that good stuff, big fan of it. I love it.
I think what's great about a good PK touches routine as well is there's so many layers that they sort of cancel each other out. So even if people are backtracking and you've got the layers of dual reality, the questions that the guests might then say to the person that was partaking it, if they converse afterwards, almost cancels the method out itself because of the difference in what they're seeing. Like, they didn't touch us, and they're like, well, they did touch you, and there's that alternate of the person knowing at what point things were happening, but it's just so good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And like you say, with the feeling objects and like imagination box with the hands where you put it in, you can feel all fantastic effect.
Yeah, they are really, really good. And like you just said, the thing with PK touches and like close up stings, dual reality moments like that, is you can be super scared of it, or you can look at it literally like you just said, like a layer of methods that you're putting together. And exactly what you just said, when you listen to a table after and you hear them conversing, they never ever go, well, he probably had this or that.
Yeah.
Because you have the will of the crowd against one person.
Yeah.
So you have sort of psychology, group mentality coming into play, and that's sort of your hidden method. And that's what we don't realize, that the audience are going to do their own magic to an extent. But the worst thing for me is to stand there and listen. For me, I have to walk away.
Yeah.
I want them to be in a situation where they can just keep asking and questioning, and I want them to dig that hole themselves. I don't want to be there interfering or for them to ask me questions. I just want them to bury themselves in what just happened.
Yeah, coming back and grabbing you later that night, like, you definitely did touch me. Like, this happened. Everybody else is saying, I know you did.
Absolutely.
Like, well, yeah, it's fantastic. Hearing people argue about what they just saw is great. It's like when people are recollecting what they've seen with a magic trick, and they're like, and then an elephant disappeared. And it's like, well, I was doing a card trick, so I don't know what you saw. But in Bizarre Magic, it worked perfectly for methods and creating things that didn't even occur, but it just makes everything so much bigger than it originally was.
Yeah, well, with Bizarre Magic, you have the element of fear as well.
Yeah.
And fear really messes with people's recollection of what happened in quite a severe way, which we've learned through doing the show, which is all it's you get different audiences every night. I've learned that from doing Bizarre Magic.
Yeah.
You can never bet on an audience, because their experience under fear is very different to excitement or I don't know, amazement. It just takes over their body. They're in fight or flight mode at that point, which, some people listening who aren't fans of Bizarre Magic, that's going to freak them out. But I would say the amount of people that go to horror films for that experience.
Yeah, this is it. Horror films, haunted attractions, even like roller coasters, amusement parks. It's that thriving for fear. Yep. And again, it's just a feeling that you can't recreate. You can't recreate that heightened sense in, sure, laughter's great and happiness and feeling elated is fantastic, but no, fear's on a whole other level. Like we mentioned before we started recording with escape rooms and things, being involved, being in essentially a horror film, but like everything's happening around you is just, there's no other feeling like it.
Yeah, it is the best. And I think, again, many magicians are very scared to utilize that.
Yeah.
I've actually seen a rise over the past few years of magicians dabbling in, maybe there's one scary trick in their set, which is great. So it means that people are opening up a bit more. But I always go to like the Magic Circle or somewhere where there's all of these posters of all these people from years gone past. And if you look at the posters at the Magic Circle, the amount of them that have some sort of bizarre supernatural thing. So at one point, the whole of London's theatres that had these amazing magicians in were absolutely immersed in this idea of the supernatural and the bizarre. And for some weird reason, over the years, Bizarre Magic has become almost shunned from the magic world, and it's seen like people think that there's no skill in it, so you're not as technically able. They think that it's long drawn out stories and that are boring. I don't really buy that if you're doing it well. I think, not that I'm saying I do it well, I'm just saying in general, if you do it well. So I don't know, for me, I think that fear should be utilized in magic. I don't think it has to be a negative thing. Fear can be an exciting thing. As long as your audience are willing to go with you on that journey, I don't think it's a problem at all. I think it's good fun. We spoke about horror escape rooms earlier, and how much, we've both enjoyed horror escape rooms because you're in a safe environment. They're in completely immersive.
As far as you're aware.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, we're both still here, so we're doing all right. We're doing all right. No chainsaws yet. But yeah, so for me, anything dual reality is great. I'm trying to put it back on course for you now. This is my podcaster brain coming back in. So for me, PK and PKFX.
Perfect. We'll get more into sort of the fear and theatrics later on in the episode, so something for people to look forward to. If you've gotten this far already, strap in.
I know. Sorry.
Hey, this is, as I say, this is probably the fastest we've done it so far, so don't worry about it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good.
The next question is probably going to be incredibly difficult, with you taking a lot of influence in your magic from the mentalism world and the sort of seancey, spooky world. What would you say is your favorite, I'm going to say top 3 books? Obviously, having had, as you mentioned, a lot of people on Desert Island Tricks with a lot of recommendations. I can imagine you've gone through a plethora of books, but I'll give you 3 to keep it easy. But if you could name, if there's one in particular, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so I think...
Sorry, it's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah, well, the thing was, I was saying earlier, I was never a massive book fan. I was never a massive reader. I had a few books, but not loads. And then I would say maybe 6 years ago, so for some reason, the bug bit. Yeah. So now I'm just a massive book collector. I've had to remodel rooms in my house several times just to fit in more bookshelves. So there's like, even on my desk, I had to fit a bookshelf on the desk just to make sure that I could fit everything. But I really enjoy them. I quite enjoy the process of collecting books. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but I do quite enjoy collecting books and finding ones that aren't in my collection, which are really annoying. But like you said, Desert Island Tricks has not done me any favors because I just today alone, I've bought 4 new ones after today's recording with today's guest, which is a nightmare. But they're only little books, so it's all right. So I think if I was to pick, there's a fantastic mentalist from Canada called Drew Backenstos. And Drew is a phenomenal creator of mentalism routines, specifically parlor stand-up routines. He does do some close-up stuff as well, but he has a book called Architect of the Mind. And it's an amazing book. And we spoke about Penguin lectures earlier, and I'm a big fan of Penguin lectures. And his Penguin lecture, easily one of the top 3 Penguin lectures I've seen. It was absolutely phenomenal. He was
go back and watch it. That's my homework for this evening.
He's great. He's got a wonderful pin divination routine, which again uses DR. It's very cleverly, very, very cleverly. So that book is absolutely jam-packed with incredibly well constructed parlor pieces and routines. He did subsequently put out a trick after that as well called Elementary. And if you're into your propless mentalism, it's one of the best propless mentalism tricks I've ever seen. And I remember him doing it over Zoom to me, or Skype, or whatever it was at the time. It was a while ago now. And it's basically a pin code divination, but done proplessly. So they think of a pin number, you ask them to imagine a couple of things, and then you pretty much know straight away what they're thinking of. Jeez. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a wonderful routine. But yeah, his other book, Architect of the Mind, it's just a fantastic book. I think it's a pain to get hold of now, but it's one of those books where I find myself going back time and time again just to revisit some of those plots. He's got a great stand-up chair testy thing with a series of numbers where each person gets 3 different numbers, which is really, really clever. Yeah, it's just a phenomenal book. And I always talk about, like, I'm I've had the opportunity to know Liam Montier for a really long time, and I think Liam Montier is probably one of the best living creators when it comes to card methods. The fact that he can take 3 or 4 methods in card magic and combine them into something that's completely different and absolutely transform them into this absolute mini work of art. And that's what I find Drew Backenstoss does for mentalism. So he's really good at taking existing methods, putting them together, and just creating something absolutely wonderful. So for me, that would be definitely in there. I think
Michael Murray's company Mind Effects was stocking Architect of the Mind a while ago. It might not be on there now, but if so, there's potentially a place to find it for anybody looking.
Well, the Michael's book, A Piece of My Mind, is absolutely phenomenal as well. Michael Murray, I've been a huge fan of his since I was younger, and he's put out some wonderful tricks. I have Deadlock in my close-up case. I think Fantastic. It's a phenomenal trick, and hopefully lots of people have that trick because it's just a great trick. My second choice would probably have to be. My last 2 choices are going to be bizarre books. Sorry, guys. The second one would have to be a Eugene Berger book. And I think it would have to be Spirit Theatre. Because what I love about that book in particular is the beginning part of the book is just a brief history of seances and bizarre magic, and it's got little bits in there about the spirit cabinet and all of these different things, and then you get to the tricks, and the tricks are amazing, but for me it's a combination of everything. It's almost like if you wanted to get into bizarre work and you wanted to learn from an absolute master, and I never had the chance to meet Eugene Berger, which I'm so gutted about. I would love to have met Eugene Berger. But the idea of having, and I think more magic books should do this because I think it's really cool, but that little bit of legit history, real history, which really cements what you're about to learn. The reason that you're about to learn this material is because of these centuries of charlatans or real people, if you believe in it. And I really like that. I like that you get to learn all of this modern new stuff, but based on all of these true old weedy stories. And like I said, I haven't come across many books that are like that.
Yeah, being able to ground the effects in truth and in history makes it so much more realistic when you're performing it, because you're not performing a magic trick or a theatre piece. You're performing essentially a recollection of a historical event, which makes it so much more realistic, and I feel like the audience can certainly feel that as well. Yeah,
well, I think my creations and my work have been massively inspired by Eugene in that respect, because I tend to find a little bit of realism somewhere, which would then inspire the trick, a bit like I spoke to you about the Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare idea. So sure, that nearly definitely isn't true, right, in the grand scheme of things. But if you were to go and, I was going to say Google, nowadays ChatGPT it, if you search up that, you'll find out that is a real story. So that is a real accusation that happened around the time. There's probably still people that do believe it. There was quite funny last year, when ChatGPT started to grow, they actually put Christopher Marlowe's text and Shakespeare's text into AI. And they asked ChatGPT, is this the same person? ChatGPT said, yes, this is definitely 100% the same person. What I just said was a lie. But that's the point. So it's the fact that I can give you a little bit of truthful context, and then I can play with the story after that, right? But I have to have that context there for you to hook and for you to buy into. And then there's a bit of artistic license around the edges, right? You can start to play a little bit more. And that's what Eugene Berger used to do. He used to start with a little bit of truth and a little bit of context, and then he would blur the lines a little bit and maybe add a rhyme or a poem or some sort of text. So that would be my second book. My second book would be Eugene's book. And my number one book is actually a combination of magazines. So my favorite book is another bizarre book, but it was called
many people
Sale.
swerving this question by being like, I'm going to pick a collection of books.
Yep. Now you know what it's like on Desert Island. I'm going to take 3 books.
That's not how this works.
What? Yep. So it was a series of magazines. I never knew them as magazines though, so I'm giving myself that. I only ever knew it as the bound copy, which I have, and it was called Seance. And Seance is a collection of magazines from loads of incredible mentalists and bizarre workers, including Eugene Berger, but also a friend. Now, I didn't know that he was who he is at the time, but Terry Tyson, if you've ever heard of him, is a phenomenal American bizarrist and mentalist.
Yeah.
And I remember getting that book, and what I love about Seance magazine is it's not just tricks, it's magic happenings, specifically scary magic happenings, which I'd never seen before. So I'd never seen people devote their time to making things in a room animate in some way. So either a book fall off a shelf, or a drawer open up on its own, or the table start to move on its own. I'd never experienced that sort of thinking. So number one, that was amazing. And there's so many clever ideas in there. And then on top of that, there's some great thinking. There's some great theories. There's some wonderful tricks in there. There's some great ideas. Obviously, you'll think about living in dead tests. But for me, it was the magic happenings. That's what really inspired me to carry on. And then my favorite ideas in the book were from a guy called Terry Tyson. So I ended up expanding on his ideas. And we're lucky now that we're in a modern age. When those leaflets and magazines were written, we didn't have the technology that we have now and the flexibility that we have now. So taking the ideas and sort of pushing them into our age really was, number one, a great mental feat for me, because how can I take these old ideas, make them more practical to us nowadays? But there was something incredibly Scooby-Doo about everything in the book, right? So it was, the idea that someone's just got a piece of string and they're pulling it, which makes something move. But what they did in Seance was, instead of that piece of string moving a chair, the piece of string hit a mousetrap, called a mousetrap, and the mousetrap flung open a book cover, and that book cover then hit another book, which then falls off the shelf, which means the book can then be picked up, right? That's not a direct method, by the way, as well, just as an idea. But there are things like that in the book. It's incredibly clever, very practical, but there's still scope to modernize things. I ended up putting small electrical remote controlled things in items, so it allowed things to use the exact same method that's in the book, but instead of me having to pull a string, a remote control triggered something that pulled a string. So yeah, for me, if you can get a hold of Seance, it really is a phenomenal book. It comes up every now and again on second hand. But if you've ever, if you're into theatrical, I mean, we spoke earlier on again, and you said that you're massively into theatrical magic. I think the ideas in that book for anyone that wants to work in a theatre or an immersive situation, there's some really clever ideas in there. There's some really wonderful, clever little triggers in there. And if it wasn't for that book, I don't know, because that is what inspired me to do Taboos, which is like a lecture series that I do every year. So if it wasn't for that book, I probably wouldn't have done it. I would never have met Terry, because Terry basically tuned into one of the Taboos and said, "That's my idea from the book." And I was like, "No way, you are the guy that wrote it." And then he ended up coming over 2 years to do my Taboos with me. So he did a little bit of his bottle pendulums and stuff like that. And to find out someone who is so ingrained in bizarre magic and mentalism, and he's worked with, Eugene, he's cited in every bloody book that I can find. It's mental. So to know that he was following my work and was a fan is unreal, absolutely incredible. So my 3 books would be Architect of the Mind, from Drew Backenstaff, Spirit Theatre from Eugene Berger, and number 1 would be the Seance collection of magazines.
As you mentioned at the start of this, recommendations, man, are literally going to put me out of money. I can't afford to keep going through this. But Seance sounds sensational. I'm definitely going to get my hands on that because the projects that we have planned for the future will massively help with things like that. So
yeah, it is a great book. There's some wonderful ideas, and it's going to be one of those ones where if you ever get hold of it, I can imagine I'll get a message on Instagram one day and be like, that's such a good idea. It's one of those books you go through and you just go, so clever. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so clever. All the way through the book. So yeah, it's a phenomenal book. It's got some great ideas. The only problem is you'll find that bizarrists, I would argue, are, and no disrespect to all of the other groups in Magic here, but I would say bizarrists are probably the most tight-knit family of magicians. They're so supportive of each other. They're very supportive of bizarre magic. They really care about it. They really care about carrying it on. But subsequently, it means that they don't like letting things go. So if anyone has seance, not many of them are going to want to let that go from them. So that is the only bad thing about bizarrist, is that they are too caught onto something. They don't want to let it go. So
this is a public service announcement. If anybody sees it on second hand, please tag me. Let me know.
Yeah, please. It may be available on Lulu.
Okay.
I'll library. Sorry, library.com. It might be on there. I don't know. It might be in PDF.
There's something so satisfying about having the book and being able to go through it and have that tactile feel. PDFs, man, I've got so many from library.com and I've just never touched them, whereas actual books I rattle through like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always better to have a proper book. And I actually don't mind if they smell a little bit old. Because I just feel like there's history there,
you know. Opening the book and smelling that and seeing the discoloration and buying it secondhand and finding the odd hair or something in it. You're like, who did this block? Where is this from? I don't know. There's stories within stories.
Yep. Especially if someone's written on it. Every now and again, you get someone who's written little notes down the side.
Love that.
Yep. Or spooky. If they passed on, then it's really spooky, really spooky.
Goodness, yeah. Maybe let's stay away from real supernatural haunted objects. Different story. If I'm buying a book that's cursed or comes with a ghost, I'm not about that life. We're going to move on away from books and more into actual performance. Do you have a particular favorite performance that you've seen somebody do, whether it be live, whether it be video? Is there any sort of performance that stands out in your mind as a particular favorite?
Do we mean magic related?
Ooh,
or not magic? Because performance is a broad spectrum, man.
Let's go with both, but predominantly magic.
Okay. So for me, magic, sadly, I never got to see it in person. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of people, as this podcast grows, you'll have lots of people say this. But for me, it was in and of itself. Because, well, several reasons. So number one, I think that the ambiguous nature of it really appeals to me. So I really like the fact that no one knows what they're about to see. And I like that no one can quantify what it is even after they've seen it. So I've always loved that because I think it raises and creates intrigue, right? So it creates an environment where people have to come and see it. What do you mean you don't know what it's about? Well, it was kind of, I don't know, it was like a play, but then there was like some magic in it. And then there was like this thing with a book. That's all I can say, really. You know, it's just such a lovely thing to have around a show and a piece of theatre. The more intrigue that you can create around a show, I think the more people want to see it or come along. So I love that. I also love the simplicity / complexity of it. because I think at face value to an audience that would seem incredibly simple.
Yeah,
right. So
like 5 tricks in total over the entire thing, but the things that are going on in the background and the blending and the ideas.
It must be
Action,
hard
man.
work, yeah, to pull that show off. It's one of those ones where you watch it and at first you're like, oh my God, what an incredible show. And then your magician mind kicks in and then you're like, wait, that brick has to be put there every night. Who is doing that? You mean someone has to come back the day after with that book, and if they don't, that part has to be
cut.
And what if that person with the letter doesn't turn up that day? You know, that show logistically must have been a nightmare for the team involved.
The letter alone, my goodness. Just what must have gone into the background of what happens with the letter. If you haven't seen in and of itself, I believe it was on Disney Plus for a while. I think it's just recently been taken off. But if you can find it anywhere, it's perfect, man. I was saying this on a previous episode. It's one of the only 2 times that I've ever cried watching Magic. And it was just an absolute roller coaster. I think I've watched it, 10, 15 times now. And every time I still find myself picking up on something new and just being like, that's so good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a phenomenal... I would say it's a work of art. I really would. Yeah. I think it's great. And I think there's so many lessons for us as performers when it comes to writing a show there. Certainly something that I've explored and I haven't even come to 0.3% of getting anywhere like in his show. But I mean, there's like the moment with the brick and the idea that he introduces this brick, which is just a brick, right? And then he tells you this story, and he tells you at the end, he says, well, now we've got a problem because the context of that brick has changed. You don't see this as a brick anymore, something that's used to build something. You see it as a weapon. And even that contextually is really interesting. The idea that he's just taken an object that people would have been sat in that auditorium looking at going, oh, there's a brick in a window. How bizarre. And then he tells this horrendous story, this gut-wrenching story, and he sits next to the brick and it's there over his shoulder, and that as an image is ridiculous. It's incredible. And then to switch the context of that normal everyday object in the eyes of the audience, I think it's just incredible. I really do. I think it's such a lovely moment, and it's something that I wish I could come up with more things like that. This idea of being able to show somebody an object and then switch straight away the context of it for them. Yeah. I think it's just, it's wonderful. And even, we overcomplicate things as performers and magicians. And I think what they did expertly with the moment where they tell people who they are. I'm trying to be as vague as I can for people who've seen it.
As you mentioned before, when you're trying to explain it to somebody, you're like, I want to give you enough hints to give you the intrigue, but I don't want to tell you so much that you know what you're going in with, because you want to go in completely blind. Because, any slight detail that you know about completely changes the way that you see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I'm talking, I am being vague, and I apologize. Everyone please listen. And I'm not giving you enough that it's going to ruin anything, so you're fine. But in terms of the magic, I think, that moment where they take the ticket and obviously they choose what they want, etc. Instead of having people come up, write something down, put it in a box, they've come and made that choice. And then the revelation of that information is just telling them back what they've picked, right? So it's literally taken
it has so much gravitas. What is just essentially a label has got so much more meaning because they've consciously made the choice to pick that thing, and it means it is them. That is what they are, and it is their person, their character, and the way that he does the revelation is just beautiful. Like him saying my brother and hugging David Blaine, and like, oh man. And then obviously there's the other part which brought me to tears in that same revelation.
Yeah,
So
it's
good.
just it's a work of art. If you haven't
I've
seen
got, literally got
it,
goosebumps talking about it,
it
man.
is it's phenomenal. But conversely, I've spoken to people who didn't like it,
Oh, no
who
way.
felt uncomfortable by it, which is interesting as well.
Okay.
Now,
I
that's not
can
necessarily a
get
bad
that.
thing, though,
Yeah.
right? Because it's still interesting. It's still an interesting thing. But they just felt, yeah, uncomfortable. More than one person has said the exact same thing to me. That there are moments where they felt really uncomfortable watching it, and they felt like someone was using a form of entertainment to elicit reactions from people. Which, on the face of it, maybe some people might be uncomfortable with that,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's a bad thing. I
It
think,
allows people to relate
yeah,
more so to the entertainment. And I think, obviously, there's a lot of very sensitive subjects that he talks about within that. But in bringing it into the entertainment space, it gives that light. And not only does it help him in a therapeutic sense of giving it that light, I've heard so many people when I've spoken about it who've also seen it talk about like them gaining like almost like a therapy from those things being talked about and being given in a different light and a much lighter sense than they are at like the heart of it.
yeah. Sorry, that's my doorbell going in the background.
Which for a magic trick is absurd. Like that concept of it having that much sort of gravitas is crazy.
Yeah, I think it really is just a work of art. If you haven't seen it, just go and see it. I don't think you're going to see many shows that are like that. I don't know if we'll ever see another show that's quite as unique as that. And for anyone who's still wondering what it is, I ain't got a clue. So you're going to have to watch it. No one really knows what it is until after you've seen it. But yeah, for me, I think that is a standout performance.
Yeah.
And something that I would love to have seen live. I would love to have been in the audience and experiencing that live. It would have just been phenomenal, I think. Yeah. But yeah,
I really hope Derek does it in the future, like some other project. I hope there's more comes from the guy because he's incredible. But as a collaborative project as well, like obviously he had a director, he had people doing like other theatrical bits and pieces. It just goes to show if you get a few heads on one thing, it can take a project that starts off as this small thing and just blown completely out of proportion. It's just stunning.
Yeah. And I think controversially, I don't know if this is true or not, but I do think that a lot of people, including big names, have seen aspects of that show and tried to replicate it in their show. I remember seeing, I mean, it's over now, so there's no spoilers here, but there was a show in London that was produced by Darren last year, not last year, the year before now, called Unbelievable. Yeah. And there was a moment there where they tease this idea of someone's loved one being in a cabinet, and then it ends up being that person in the cabinet, which is very much the Letter vibe. I would say. So I do think that people are going to try and take that concept. I know that on our podcast, the wonderful Edward Hilsom from the Magic Circle, if anyone's not heard of him, please do seek him out. He's such a lovely guy. He has a great idea with like a photo, and he spoke to me about that, and it has that same sort of letter moment but with a photo, which I think is great. So lots of people I think are going to try and play with that concept of, it's almost, I don't know, like a weird coincidence that happens there and then, but really it's not a coincidence.
Such a meaningful, like, it
means
great.
something.
I think it's one of the strange things about magic is because of it being such a tight-knit community and sort of performances being put on that pedestal, when people come to creating their own ideas and taking inspiration, it's so difficult to keep the concept as good as it is, but stray far enough away from it for it to not be, oh, that was very Delgado-esque, or that was very Jamie Daws-esque. So it's a fine balance to play with those without it being comparatively the same.
I think that the difficult thing there is that, I mean, from my perspective, certainly, and I'm not the most clued up person in the world, but I hadn't seen a moment like that in a magic show or really a theatrical show before. There was something that I saw many years ago when I was at university, which was at the Royal Opera House in London, where this performer who's called Robin Deacon, he basically gave the audience, this is not magic either, this is just theatrical, he gave the audience an envelope when they came in, and a voice over the tannoy said, "Do not open until instructed," and it had it on the envelope. And it created this weird intrigue. And then he came on the stage and he basically spoke about his heritage and his upbringing. And inside the envelope, when we were allowed to open them, were postcards. But each one was an embarrassing photo of him as he was growing up. So like one when he was a toddler pulling a funny face, one when he was a teenager having the school photo and his hair's crazy and he looks all spotty, you know. So it was all of these sorts of things going through the years. And there was something really personalized and quite raw about that. And that was the only time really that I'd seen a performance where the audience almost interacted with the performer and were allowed into their sort of personal side of things, their personal life. And then when I saw Derek Delgodio's thing, again, trying not to give anything away, but it had that same sort of feeling of the audience being allowed in on this personal moment, which was obviously the magic side of it is it's contrived in some way, right? So it's made to happen some way. We know it, the audience know it, but at that moment, we don't care how it happened. We care about what's happening. And I think that is the first time that I'd seen that. So then when you see anything after that, it's hard to not link it back to that, because that's the first time you experienced it. That was the first time you saw it. So maybe it's not Derek who has done that to these other performers. Maybe that's just me interpreting it that way. But I think anytime that I see something like that is going to make me think of Derek's show, because it's just such a poignant, beautiful moment that, again, must have just so many headaches must have been had in those shows. So many people must have been scavenging around at the back, like screaming out. So yeah, it's great. It's great show. Loved it.
Go watch it. I fear discussing it anymore out of divulging what happens in it, but please get your hands on it in any way you can. It's sensational. I'm going to flip this completely on its head, and we're going to be slightly negative for just a second, and then we'll come back to positivity at the end, because I figured out that's the order it's got to go in. Otherwise, we end on a negative and then go into the questions, and it's like, this is a bit weird now. What is your magic industry gripe? Whether it be something that you feel is overperformed, or just something that you generally don't believe should be part of the magic community.
This is a bit like on our podcast now, we've got the banishment, and I always feel for the guests because they say it.
Sorry to throw you into this, but magicians love drama, so...
Well, the thing is, you can either see it as a negative, or it's a way to get other people to think and to question things, and that's why we put the banishment in, because sometimes if someone gives you a negative opinion, that's fine, as long as they back it up. And sometimes I've had people say to me, "Oh, I don't like this," and I'm like, "Whoa, now, chill out." And then they start talking to me about it, and they give me their perspective and their point of view. And then sometimes I go, "Actually, yeah, maybe I should try it a different way. Maybe I should try and do it this way." So, it's not necessarily a bad thing all the time. For me, I don't have a huge amount of gripes with our industry. I think I've been involved in the industry in some way or another since I was 16, and I'm 36 this year. So I've been in it long enough to not really get too annoyed with stuff nowadays. I think for me, the biggest gripe that I have is performers not doing things because they're worried about other performers. And I think that's really sad. I think that we are an industry that, we're quite large to us, but we're a small niche, really, in the grand scheme of the world. We should be encouraging each other. We should be pushing each other forward. We shouldn't be looking down on other people. And I've spoken to so many magicians and performers, certainly like apprentices at the circle and stuff like that, who feel like they can't progress in our industry because they're worried about what other magicians are going to say. And I think so many performers are scared to do a certain thing because they think that's the way it should be. And I don't think that's right. I think we should all be encouraging each other. We should all be pushing each other forward. We shouldn't be saying someone shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, because it may not work for you, but it may work for them. But by telling them that they shouldn't do that, it's not going to help them. It's not going to push them forward. It's not going to encourage them. By all means, show them a different way to do it. Like I mentioned earlier, like there's a difference between do not do this or have you thought about trying to do it this way? You know, there's a big difference. But I do think it really hurts people thinking that they cannot achieve when they can achieve if they want. But for me, I hate hearing when someone's like, I haven't gone to a convention. Why not? Well, you know, there's just so many people there and I don't know what they're going to say. Or it's really sad to hear that. Like, you don't really want that. People should feel compelled to just go out there, try it and do it, and hope that they have the confidence and the support of other people around them. Because I know certainly for me, even certain groups of people I walk into, and there's so many big personalities that I just feel like maybe I don't want to be there at that moment. And if that's me feeling it, imagine what someone just coming into our industry is feeling like. You know, it must be so daunting and scary for them. Really, I would love it if everyone just went, guys, what are you into? You're into card tricks? Great, show me a card trick. Or you're into mentalism? Wicked, show me a billet peak. Or, you know, whatever. We should just be encouraging it, and also just not putting other people's type of magic down. Like, if someone's doing something you don't agree with, okay, like that's not your cup of tea, but there's no reason to hate all of it. You just go, oh, you know,
that's why they're doing it and you're not. Like,
yeah, exactly that. So for me, it's not, I don't really have any gripes of our industry, because I think all industries have their ups and downs. All industries have drama. All industries have the faces and the names and the egos. It's every industry. It's not unique to ours at all. I know that we think it's unique to ours, but it's not. It happens to every industry. So it doesn't matter where you go in the world, every industry has those pockets of things going on. But if we could just be more supportive to each other and push ourselves forward, I think it'd be so much better. So much better.
I think what's really strange is there's almost the two opposite ends of the spectrum with that. Like, the community is both incredibly that way, but at the same time, there's a lot of prolific names and creators who are willing to give their time and share their ideas and just sit down at conventions and like jam with people. And there's the complete flip side in which people are so unbelievably nice. And that's one thing that I think the magic industry is also doing incredibly right, which you just wouldn't get in any other industry. Like, you couldn't just go to the Olympics as an aspiring athlete and just chill with Mo Farah and be like, let's discuss your techniques for this. Like, whereas magic, you have the possibility to do that at conventions, and everybody's happy to share and divulge in those ideas, which is great as well.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I mean, before I worked for Alakazam, I've known Pete since I've known him since I was about 18, maybe a bit before that, because I pitched him a very bad trick many years ago. And, you know, to give him credit where credit's due, he's always been so good with his time. And there are so many times in my career where he didn't have to help me. He didn't have to do anything, but he still gave his time to me. And again, Liam Monte, who I've known since I was 16, he's always given me his time. You know, if I send him a message, he'll come back and he'll answer straight away, and he'll give input and he'll give ideas. So you're absolutely right. If you find one bad egg, there's going to be another 5 in that box who are good. So, you know, don't be scared and concerned about talking to them, because a lot of people are really, really, really nice. You just got to, find them and stick to them, I think, is the answer.
But at the same time, don't be a weirdo. Don't
Yeah, don't.
don't go in there and hassle everyone. And
Yeah,
there's a line. It's a line. Figure
there's a
out where it
line.
is and stick
100%.
with
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. I agree.
We're going to bring this back round to something slightly more positive, and then we'll be done with the quickfire section.
Yeah, an
And we'll
hour
get into
in.
the main crux of the questions. My goodness, this might be we're in for a long episode. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen. The next one is your influences. Normally, when the podcast episode is sort of going out, I'll try and put 4 or 5 of the most prolific influences onto the sort of profile, just so that people can see it and they can deem whether the sort of influences and things like that are something that they might be interested in, and then it gives them reason to hop into the podcast. So 5 influences, I know, isn't a lot, especially when you have so many different backgrounds in different types of tricks. But if you had to list sort of the 5 most prolific, who would they be?
Influences. So think number one would have to be Darren. I think anyone that performs mentalism owes that man something. Let's all be entirely honest. I think without him and the structures of his shows and the way things were put together, I don't know if I would think and produce in the same way. I think he really did pave the way for so many performers. And like, obviously I had the very fortuitous opportunity to interview him for our podcast last year, which was petrifying, to say the least. But I remember saying to him, I was about, I don't know, I want to say I must have been year 7, year 8. So I was 11, 12 years old. And I remember going around Croydon, which is also where he's from, and seeing all of the bus shelters with his Russian roulette images. And I still remember it. I still remember that happening. And I remember watching it. I remember seeing it live, which it should never have happened. I was too young. But I remember watching it live. And ever since that day, I've literally just followed everything. I watched all of the specials that he did. I have them all on video. I've still got the videos. I did not throw them away. They are very worn out at this point, especially the covers. The covers faded massively. And then they put them onto DVD box sets. I've got all of his DVD box sets because they always had some really cool extras on there, which you wouldn't get if it was on TV. So I was always just a massive, massive fan. And then I remember going to, I think it was the Garrick Theatre in London, to see An Evening of Wonders. And that was just absolutely eye-opening. It was the first time I'd seen anything quite like that in person. And ever since then, I've just been a massive fan. I've consumed everything he's done. And one of the comments that I had after that podcast just was, it's a bit scary how you seem to know everything. About, yeah. It was very much, he fired a reference at me. I was like, yeah, on this one, you did it this time, which is probably frightening for him in hindsight. But yeah, so it has to be, Darren has to be up there, really, doesn't he? He's just a phenomenal performer. But my second influence would have to go hand in hand with Darren, which of course has to be Andy Nyman, because they are one and the same in some respects. And I remember growing up going to the Magic Cave, which was in Covent Garden. And you used to have like Neil Henry work there. That was the first time I met Angelo Carbone back then. And I didn't really know who Angelo was at the time. Lee Hathaway worked there, which was great. And we used to go there all the time and just sort of hang and talk to other performers and magicians. And on the stall there, they had a trick, which was Dice Man by Andy Nyman. And that was the first time I was introduced to his work. And each time they just say, oh yeah, we're going to swap out a card. And then they would just keep doing it again and again to me, which when you're like 17, 18 is super annoying because you just want to know how it works. And then of course they showed me Killer Elite Pro, which was the little wallet, which was one of the first tricks I ever took out for a gig as well. And I've still got my original, the plastic's torn, the back is faded, the gold writing on the back is all completely faded off, where I just loved it so much. And then they showed me another one, which was called The Hidden, which I also took out when I first started gigging, which was a wonderful trick with a deck of cards. And those influences, those three tricks that I just mentioned, if you think about a mentalist, you think Darren Brown, Andy Nyman. They're both very much the same tricks. And then, of course, they brought out Get Nyman, which was a phenomenal DVD, which I just watched hundreds and hundreds of times. Honestly, I just watched it over and over and over again. It's just such a wonderful set of DVDs, and the tricks are so clever. There's some really wonderful ideas. And I remember watching the opening trick, which is just 2 envelopes. It's just 50-50, and going, my God, he's Darren Brown. This is literally Darren Brown. Darren would do this. This feels like a Darren trick. And that's when I realized that they were obviously Darren and Andy Nyman. So yeah, for me, Andy is up there. I've always loved this trick. So I think he's so clever. He's so smart. And now he's obviously in big films and theatre shows as well, which hopefully we'll get to see him at some point this year. So Andy is up there. Third choice, another mentalist, probably Luke Jamay. Massive Luke fan. Grew up with Luke. Another person. Here's Luke Jamay's Mind DVD set.
Phenomenal set.
From start to finish, over and over and over again. I think it's just phenomenal. His envelope trick in there. He has, technically it's a living in dead test, right? With envelopes. I've done that close up at tables now since that DVD set come in. So I've literally done it so many times. I've got it actually.
No way.
So I've always got a set of them ready to go because I love it so much. I think his thinking, I've seen him a couple of times live as well, but his thinking on things is phenomenal. I remember seeing one of his shows, maybe at the Marlow Theatre, somewhere like that. And it was just it was a masterclass in keeping an audience engaged with very little, because his show was very, very minimalistic. It almost felt like a true seance psychic show, I would say, at the time. But he had the whole audience on the edge of their seats. And it's only ever at a Luke Jamay show where we've walked out and we've heard audience members quite literally pick apart the scenic things that Luke had put in there to give some explanation. So, for example, there was one of the shows where he had bird sound playing. And at the end of the show, one of the women outside, my friend Sarah, spoke to her, and she said, well, it must have been the birds. The birds must have been saying something and we could interpret them somehow. So that's how it was happening. So, but things like that always happen at his shows. Every show that we've gone to, people are really meticulous at picking apart. And it was also at one of his shows that I noticed something interesting in a magic show. And that was that he puts things in the pre-show. When I say pre-show, I don't mean that methodologically. I mean before the show starts, he will put things on the stage to make the audience speak. So I remember one of the shows, hopefully I'm not giving anything away, but he put a projection on there. I won't say what the projection is. Maybe that's the best way to do it. So he put this projection on there, and the audience were literally just coming in either side, sitting down straight away. Whoa, what does that mean? Is there something hidden in that? What is that pointing out? And that was when I realized the importance of putting things in your set or the design to get the audience excited, get them into an atmosphere or a receptive state, I would say, for the show. So yeah, Jamay for me, wonderful performer.
Yeah, pre-show and post-show as a concept as a whole is so much fun to play with, because it's again taking the show and making it so much bigger than it is. Like coming back to Delgadio with the brick. That show ends there and then continues after the show's finished and happens elsewhere as well. Like being able to introduce concepts where it gets people talking beforehand or afterwards, they're walking out of the venue and noticing things as they go out and they're like, that links back to what just happened. It's just so much fun to play with, and yeah, the possibilities are endless as well.
And post-show is even more interesting when it comes to a bizarre show, because you if you want to scare an audience so that when they leave the venue they're still scared, that's a really interesting concept to play with. But then you have to tread a fine line with how scared do you want them to be, and do you want emails the following week. So yeah, you do have to be a little bit careful with that. But those three so far, who else would I say? Obviously Eugene Berger. Oh my god, just an incredible storyteller. I have again taken influences from him in my show. I do a version of Gypsy Thread, and I've put a poem to it, which, you know, is very Eugene Berger-esque. I think he, not only did he have a wonderful voice, again, I remember talking to, I think it was Matt Wright on the Desert Island Tricks podcast, and he spoke about being with Eugene Berger and sitting down in a cafe with him, and sort of how, I'm presuming eccentric, a little bit eccentric Eugene Berger would have been, and how, you know, he had this persona about him. And there are very few performers that I can think about where I think, imagine sitting down with that person. Imagine how interesting and surreal and bizarre that would be.
Yeah,
a person would be. So there's not many people that I can imagine.
No, Eugene, Max. Like there's a few, but
Maven would have been great as well.
Yeah.
He would have been great. But I saw you posted on your podcast continuing things, right, for your podcast.
Yeah.
And this was an idea that I came up with another podcast. I'm going to give it to you, so if you want it, you can, right? So the idea of a magic dinner party, right? So if you could bring back anyone living or dead to a magic dinner party, who would you have around your table? So you're only allowed 4 people. Who would you have? I think that's a really interesting question to put to performers, because certainly for me, Berger would be at that table.
Yeah.
I would bring him back and listen to some of the weird stories he inevitably has. And someone somewhere hopefully will publish a book one day just of his stories, not of his tricks, just Eugene Berger stories of things that he got up to and interesting stories. I think it'd be great. But you can have that concept. You're welcome. That's
let me just quickly make a note of that.
I think it'll be a good one. Who would my last influence be? My last influence would be, I think there would probably be 2 more, and I think he'd be annoyed if I didn't say him, but probably Pete Nardi, and probably Mark Spellman as well. I think both of them combined are really lovely people, number one, but both of them have just given so much time. And I think sometimes when we think about influence isn't just about someone who you've seen, who you admire and you want to replicate, but it's also the influence that people have given you physically. And I think that Pete has given me so much influence, and Mark has given me so much influence over the years. I mean, Mark is just so, I mean, the man can talk. He will not mind me saying that. He can talk for days. But whenever he talks, he is someone, again, same as Pete, you do just stop and listen. And I will admit that now that I work for Alakazam and I see Pete often, I do take it for granted that he is Pete Nardi and he's there, if you know what I mean. But you think about the things that both of those 2 people have done, the time that they give everyone. Mark Spellman is just one of the most lovely people I've ever met. He cares a lot. Not just about magic, but about people. He cares about pushing people forward and helping people. He's always so nice with his time and his knowledge. He just knows so much. He just consumes everything. And likewise with Pete, like I said earlier, he's given me so much time over the years that I didn't really deserve, or he didn't need to give me that time, but he still gave it to me. So without him I would never have done a lot of the things, because he's great with Pete. It's not just about the magic, it's about the business, and it's about the knowledge of different things and how to how to keep creative and stay creative. So without him, I wouldn't have, like, many years ago, I started up a subscription service. That was him. That was him on the phone to me one day, who just said that you've got so much stuff, just do a subscription. You know, tackling terrifying taboos, really, that was his concept. He said, well, each year, why don't you come back and do a lecture just on bizarre magic? Again, he knew that I had so much material. Product development, like now I produce all of my own tricks, and arguably my tricks are up to the standard of a mainstream producer. I'm doing that all myself, but that was all because of Pete saying, do this, go here, try this. So for me, that side of influence is more about what those two people have given me in terms of time, in terms of encouragement, in terms of knowledge. They're both really lovely people. So I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky to have known lots of people. And just as another person, it would have Liam Montier as well. Like Liam, I've known since I was 16. He's one of the most lovely people that you'll ever meet in our industry. He really is. He's just so nice. And probably the most knowledgeable magician I've ever met. He just knows everything. He's one of these nutters, right? Who, and I'm saying nutters, and he won't mind me saying that, but he's one of these crazy people who you show him a move, and he's like, oh yeah, I've seen that in this book, this page, this line down, it starts on this paragraph. How do you know that? How do you have this?
Wikipedia?
Literally that. He's absolutely incredible. He's so clever. He's so smart. He's so kind. Yeah. So Liam would have to be there. But in terms of influences, I think that would probably manifest itself most in my work and my career going forward. I think all of those people are amazing.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear everyone's different influences, because when you hear them, you then immediately go, "Boss."
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to see other people in what you're doing, which is very interesting.
When I listen back, I'm interested to see what Michael Murray's are. Actually, Alex McAleer's as well. Alex is super lovely. He came on our podcast as well, and we're doing something with him later on this year. And he was so nice. So I reckon Darren's got to be on his list as well.
Yeah, Darren was on both Michael's and Alex's.
Yeah, and any mentalist is going to be, right? It has to be.
He's such a prolific name, and he's definitely... I think with Alex, we spoke about the whole pre and post Darren scene for mentalism and how much it's changed because of that. And I think with Michael as well, we discussed obviously the whole situation of Darren copies that came about after that as well, which is another topic entirely.
Yeah,
it's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Anyone that has done mentalism and done the whole, it's in your body language or anything like that. We all have to give, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's almost like a presentational genre that he's created, right? And I don't think it's bad that people do that, as long as we're not copying his tricks verbatim. I think that's important. But in terms of a presentational hook, I think it's great, and we all do it. So we might as well just admit to it.
Especially in the public eye as well, Darren is by far the most sort of prolific in that mentalism genre. So when people think mentalism, or they think that's already the sort of concept that they have in mind. So when they see people bringing that to play, they're immediately having the connection of, oh, this guy's going to do something Darren Brown-esque, and therefore they can relate to that. And it's not like a completely different concept entirely that they're then having to allow themselves to be entertained by. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But all of those people are wonderful. So thank you to all of them, even though none of them will ever know about this podcast or even care. So there we go.
Fingers crossed one day.
Fingers crossed. They will. You watch.
Well, let's take it back all the way to the very start, and we'll go back through those influences, back to your origin story. Why did you get into bizarre magic, and how did it come about? What is your origin story?
That's a really good question. So it isn't quite as people would probably expect. I think I've been quite public when I say I actually don't really enjoy horror at all. I'm not really a big horror fan, which really freaks people out, because obviously all of my tricks tend to be bizarre or scary. And whilst I don't like horror, what I do love is the supernatural. So I'm a big fan of the supernatural, and I'm quite into like witchcraft and folklore. I really enjoy that side of this sort of world that we're in, bizarre magic.
Are you a believer of the supernatural? Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Just to put you on the spot.
Right. So I would say, and this is a really interesting one. So no one's ever actually publicly asked me. So bear with me. No, but yes. Right. So
Okay.
no, that I don't believe in it currently, but yes, that I'm open-minded to believing it.
Yes.
So what I would love is to have a supernatural experience that I can't explain, that would make me believe in it, right? But we are magicians, we're very rational thinkers. So without that concrete evidence, without that experience, I can't say that I am. That being said, I have had experiences that loosely I can't explain. So for example, last year we were at a venue that we were doing the show. So obviously I do a bizarre play, like one-man play magic show that's a ghost story, and we were in a abandoned abbey sort of place, right? And myself, Jenny, and Peter Nardi had all done a ghost hunt there as well as doing the show. That's how we got to know the show. And we were packing up, and it was myself, Harry, Jenny, Harry's girlfriend, and I think that was it, just us. And we were upstairs on this top floor, nothing below us at all. And we distinctly all heard footsteps coming towards us, but they were quite clearly footsteps. I think there was no one there that would have said that they weren't footsteps. And it was so loud that all of us stopped, and Jenny and I think Harry and his girlfriend all physically moved away from where it was. As in, they moved themselves away from where the sound was because they could hear it and they knew something weird was happening. Now, rational me was, what's underneath? There was nothing underneath. Rational me, heating. There was no radiators. There's no heating in it because it's just a stone building. It's derelict. So yeah, I don't know. Little things like that happen. But I think what's really interesting is, like, behind me on the shelf, you can't really see, I've got a bookshelf there, but up there I've got Ouija boards. I've got a little shelf at the top that John Morton gave me a coffin, and inside the coffin there's a little story, a true story, with a black feather coming out. And he said, you know, if you open this, something's going to die. And I was like, haha. And he's like, no, something will die. I'm telling you now, something will die if you open this. So it's up to you whether you open it or not. So that is closed. I've never opened it. I do not know what he put inside it, but it is on the shelf. But I've also got, I've got a doll kicking about somewhere. On the very top of it, I've got some more things. I've got spirit bells. I've got boxes on there. So if there's anyone that ghosts would want to visit, hey guys, I'm an open call, you know, come on in, have a chat. Scare me, do whatever you want. So that's the interesting thing. I'm quite open and receptive. I would love something like that to happen, but as of yet, nothing's happened. So
it's so strange because I'm of a similar mindset. Like, I don't believe it, but I'm open to it. But even having had experiences that I can't explain, I still find myself being like, nah, surely there was something. Like, for example, one sort of main thing that jumps to mind, when I was moving into a house with a housemate, we were carrying a sofa up a flight of stairs, and I started like falling backwards, and I felt a hand push against my back. I felt the like finger, I could feel the indices like pressing against my back, and I turned round to say thank you, assuming it was my housemate's parents, and I turned round and there was nobody there, but I like distinctly felt that, and I was like, okay, that's not okay.
no,
But still afterwards I was like, it's not good enough.
yeah,
How I can perceive that as not good enough proof is beyond me, but I don't know, there's still some sort of rational part of my brain that's like, nah, there's a reason for that, there's an explanation.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because we're magicians, we're rational thinkers naturally. There has to be a method.
Yeah.
We're never going to believe in magic. So with that, my brain would go to, okay, but there could have been someone there who was just walking past, put their hand there, and then walked off before you had the opportunity
It's halfway
to see
up a flight of stairs. Like,
You know,
nobody around. They were outside in the car. Like, I've gone through these questions and just feel like, nah, that's not okay.
yeah, there's just so many different outcomes. That's the problem. And without being there and seeing it, it's really difficult to say. I mean, there could have been some ghostly furniture movers who were helping you out. We will never know.
Regardless, thanks. I didn't fall down the stairs with the sofa on top of us. So
absolutely, yeah.
I'm eternally grateful for that.
Who cares? But then, you know, I'm quite into this. Like, there are lots of people that believe in guardian angels and stuff like that. Again, I've never seen any evidence of anything like that. I've never been in a situation where something bad's happened, a bit like what you just mentioned, and something stopped. I've never seen a ghost in the corner of the room, like a lot of people say. There's been no shadow people in my room. Never experienced any of that. And it's kind of annoying because I'm like, well,
please.
Guys, I need to write another show. I need some inspiration, guys. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, at the moment, no, I don't believe it. There's a great podcast. We were talking earlier on before we went live about podcasts. I'm a massive podcast nut. And there's a wonderful podcast called We Can Be Weirdos. And on there, for a bizarrist, there's just years worth of ideas in there. But essentially, people just talk about their weird beliefs. But there's a wonderful part in it called the soft rock. And the idea being that the host, his mate, was at a festival or something one night. He went to sleep, and he came went to sleep in a field because he was drunk. He came back the next day and said, "Guys, I've discovered a soft rock." And it was like, "What are you on about?" Like, I lay down. It was a rock, massive rock. It was soft. Like, mate, what are you going on about? So he went to find the rock. He took his mates to go and find it. He said, there's the rock. It was a cow pat, right? So it was a big, steamy cow poo that had basically sat in the sun for long enough that it had a skin over the top of it. So you could lay on it and it wouldn't make you messy, is a nice way of putting it. But ever since then, the host has spoken about a soft rock, right? So the idea that something's happened to you that's impossible. You know it's impossible. A bit like your sofa thing, right? You know that that's impossible. But it happened.
Yeah.
You know that it happened. It definitely happened the way that you imagined it, or the way that you remembered experienced it. But it's impossible. That could never have happened. You couldn't have just had a random hand push you back up.
Yeah.
And what's great is he asks every guest what their soft rock is. And a lot of the time it's like paranormal, ghostly. And it's just such a fascinating part of the podcast. So if you're into like your ghost stories and real experiences, it's a phenomenal podcast. You have to go in with an open mind because obviously people are talking about their beliefs, and whether you don't believe them or not, it doesn't matter. It's not about you, it's about them and their interpretation of the world and life. So you have to go in with an open mind. Some of them are going to be out there, soak it up. It gives you maybe some tricks in the future. So soak it up. But it's a great podcast. Yeah, it's a great one. And lots of people have ghostly experiences. It's really interesting. It's great.
And how does this link back to your origin story before I took you on a wild tangent?
Oh, yeah. That's what that was about, wasn't it? So I'm not massively into horror films. I am into the supernatural. And my background is really in theatre. And I think I've spoken about this before elsewhere, but I was a massive musical theatre nut. That's what I spent the majority of my life obsessing over. I absolutely loved it. I went all the way through school, did all of the school productions that we ever did. I wasn't quite as out there as maybe I should have been to be in that profession, but I really loved it. I just loved being on stage. I loved musical theatre. I love acting. I loved all of that sort of stuff. So then I went on to college, and I actually stayed in a sixth form at the school because it was a performing arts status school. So they specialise in performance, basically, and their shows were pretty damn good at the time. They're amazing. So I went through that. That got me into university. And then at university, I did drama and performance studies. So that meant for the first time, I got to really explore drama and really learn about it. That's when we talk about weird coincidences. So when I was younger at school, the school trip went to the the Royal Opera House, to see a show about playwrights. And the playwright is the one that I told you about earlier, with the guy with the photos, and that he had different pictures, right? And I remember seeing that show. Now, I only got to see that show because someone dropped out that morning and I got their place. So I was very lucky to go. And then years later, I started at university, and my lecturer said, I'm going to show you one of my pieces of work from years ago, and proceeded to play that clip. He only done that performance once. It was only at the Royal Opera House. I only just got the opportunity to go that morning, and I still had the postcards and everything because I remembered that show. So we had a weird talk. So yeah, my lecturer ended up being the guy that put that performance together. So then I did drama and performance studies, and that was where I started sort of exploring the idea of ghosts and ghost stories, because you have to learn a lot about Greek tragedies and Oedipus and Shakespeare, which ghosts are always a running theme. And towards the end of my degree, we were basically set a final performance. So the idea is that this is the big performance that you're going to get marked on. And for me, it couldn't have gone any better, because the criteria was you have to fool an audience in some way. So that was the criteria that we were given. Absolutely brilliant. It was great. And then I decided to go down a different route to a lot of my classmates. So I remember one of them did this thing where people had to come in and think about the thing that upset them about themselves, so something they did not like, and then write it on the body of someone else in pen, so that they were covered in all these horrible words. So like, I don't know how that was tricking an audience, but there was a criteria behind it. I remember another one of them did a dinner party, and this was excellent. I loved it. So she had a dinner party, and she put envelopes underneath chairs of the audience members. Already it feels magic-y, right? And they all came up onto the stage. When they came up onto the stage, they had to hand over the mobile phones. Bearing in mind, back then, mobile phones were not as well protected as they are now. So that'll make sense in a minute. And then they had to sit down on this really long dinner table with cloth dinner plates on it. And then each person had to eat or drink what was underneath that cloth if they wanted their phone back. All right.
Oh, that's cool.
So the first person sat down, bearing in mind we hadn't seen this. There was one performance, we watched the mark thing with a real audience. Came up, sat down, there was this girl, and she said, you need to eat whatever it was. It was something disgusting on the plate. I can't remember what it was. And the girl was like, no. And she was like, no, you're gonna eat what was on that, or I'm not giving you your phone back. And the girl was like, well, clearly no, I'm not gonna do that. No, like, it doesn't matter whether it's a performance or whatever, I'm not gonna do that. So then the girl in my year took this audience member's phone. There's a big jug of drinking water, and just dropped this audience member's phone into this jug of water, which of course sent this audience member into a massive rage, absolutely freaked out, effing and blinding, like threw everything on the floor and stormed out. And all of us backstage were just like, I think that might be going too far. I think basically pushing an audience member that far is not the right thing to have done. Turns out that was an actress that we did not know about. So the idea was that it would scare the rest of the audience members to thinking that it was real, so they would more likely go along with it. And then I think she ended up with having like a massive tray full of £50 notes, and she said to the last person, if you eat that, which was something really horrendous, I can't remember what it was really bad, then I'll give you this money. So yeah, it was really, really clever. Anyway, so my version of that was, I wanted to really freak an audience members out so that they weren't aware of what was real and what was fake. That was my approach. And we had to do little things beforehand to show our process. So I remember going to Davenport's and getting razor blades, fake razor blades, for a razor blade swallowing. And then I went and bought real razor blades, and I took out the real razor blades and I repacked the fake razor blades in the same packaging. I sealed it all back up so it looked brand new, and it looked exactly the same. And then I got an apple, and I got a corer or something like that, but it was thinner. And I put a hole in an apple, and I took one of those blood capsules that you bite into, and then it makes your mouth bleed. And I put it into the hole of the apple, basically. And then we had to sit in a circle, and I remember saying, my lecturer saying, all right, so can you show us your progress? I was like, okay. And I didn't say anything. I just got these razor blades out, and everyone was like, what's going on? So I took them out, undid them, took some paper, because anyone that knows those blades, the corners are actually quite sharp. You can cut paper with it. And then I just sort of put it towards my mouth like that. And then that was the moment that everyone started to freak out. And that was the first time that I'd had that reaction from an audience. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, you're all really uncomfortable about what's going to happen, but it's not real, which I thought was really interesting. So I literally put it to my tongue, and I dragged down, and I just pretended like I cut myself. And I sort of put it down onto the table, took an apple and bit out of the side where the blood capsule was, and just started chewing on the blood capsule until the blood started to come down my lip. And of course, by that point, people were not happy in the room. They were absolutely shielding their eyes and stuff. My lecturer was not. He was just like, what is going on here? And then, of course, I explained to them that they're not real, and that the quietness of me not saying anything was just to dramatize it, and that there's a blood capsule in there, etc., etc. So then we got to the final performance, and I like this idea of freaking an audience out and then feeling uncomfortable, and having that really dangerous object, so that little razor blade, helped me forward. And I thought, well, a razor blade isn't really a typical thing for an entire audience to have. What would they have? So I came up with this concept of having an acupuncture seminar. So the audience come in and they think that I'm going to teach them about acupuncture. And part of that is the audience all had a real acupuncture needle when they came in the theatre. So I bought like 500 of them so that all of the audience could have one. And what really happened was we hired a dentist's chair, but it was from the National Theatre. So it was all like gross and disgusting. And we had a lamp, and I had a Funken ring on my finger. Now, anyone that knows a Funken ring, basically you tap it and sparks fly out. And I had a needle through arm as well. And the idea was that I was going to put an audience member in the chair and say, right, everybody, you can get these large needles. And basically, instead of inserting loads of little needles, you can actually put it into a core acupuncture spot. And a core acupuncture spot basically means that you don't have to put loads of little needles in, just a bigger needle does the same thing. So that was the idea. And then, of course, I put the needle through her arm. I pick up the lamp sparks, I drop it, pretend like something's gone wrong. And of course, she looks down, sees the needle through her arm, the audience see it, freak out. Then my lecturer, who is in on it, says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry, this shouldn't have happened. Can we just ask you to vacate the theatre for a second? So the audience then had to go out of the theatre into a back room, which just happens to overlook the road, where we could get a paramedic to walk in. So then we had an actor who was a paramedic, who is a magician as well now. And he comes into the theatre in like the rucksack and the jacket. The audience see him coming in. We take the girl out, and then the audience come back in and she's not there anymore. And they're questioning, well, what just happened? Was that real or was it not? So that was the idea. The only problem is, didn't realise that she might pass out. So she did look down at her arm and just gone. So
this person wasn't in on it?
No, she was not in on it.
Oh.
We decided not to tell her. I do needle through arm with a spectator now in my current show. I prep them. I tell them that it's going to be okay, that they're not going to be hurt in any way, and just to trust me, and it will be fine. But yeah, there was, she just passed out. It was only for a couple of minutes, but it did cost me marks because I did not factor that into the risk assessment. So thank you, whoever you were. But from that point, I literally just carried on thinking about ways to freak an audience out in an interesting way. And then I started looking at like horror films and what makes them scary, and storytelling a little bit more, and seeing more plays and musicals. I've always been a massive musical fan, so I've always been obsessed with staging and lighting and how things move in and out and how things are constructed so that you don't see certain things in theatre. And that was it. I just carried on developing, and now I have this sort of weird niche where I can come up with loads of bizarre and weirdy tricks. But I love it. I love storytelling. I think storytelling is such an underrated thing that we have in our arsenal, and so many magicians frown on it, look down on it, when really it's one of the most powerful tools that we have. You know, every trick that we perform is a story in and of itself, but we can just expand on that story and make it more interesting. So that was a really long story, but there we go. Yeah, so that was the origins from that point on.
Storytelling at its finest.
Yep, there you go.
It does seamlessly take us on to the next question, though, which is obviously fear and theatricality are something that you play with a lot. How do you go about introducing the level of theatricality that you had with, for example, Welcome to the Fearground, which was your previous show, and what impact does this have on creating a suspenseful and scary atmosphere and environment?
Well, yeah, the show. So the first show that I wrote was called All the Fun of the Fear. And like you said, it was in a fairground. It was like a haunted fairground. And then last year we had to move out of that venue, and I had to rewrite the show for a new venue. So it's pretty much the same show, if I'm entirely honest. But there was just a slight tweak in the storyline because it was at like an old abbey, basically, last year. So we had to change it a little bit. I think, I can't remember what the ending of that one was. There was some sort of catastrophe anyway, and everyone died because it's a happy show. It's a really happy show. So I think for me, when I was writing the show, I've always been a big fan of theatre plays, especially ghost plays. And I spent the year before watching lots of ghost plays or whodunits. Whodunits are very good for us to watch because the way they're formatted is very much a magic show. There are little things hidden all the way through, which at the end sum up to something. Like 222, A Ghost Story is a great version of that. If you've not seen it, go and see that. It's a great play.
But on the list, I'm going to go see it this year.
It's great. Black. So basically, at the end, what happens? No, I won't do that.
Oh, wow.
Straight in there. It's a great play. It really is. And the guy who wrote that is a guy called Danny Robbins, who has another great podcast called Uncanny. He now has a BBC TV show as well by the same name. And he has a book as well called Uncanny,
and
which is really good.
Theatre performance now too, which is sold out a year in advance. I went to book tickets the other day and it's already gone.
Yeah. It's because it's great. His book is amazing. Read his book. It's superb. Really, really good.
I'm going to spend an unholy amount of money with this podcast.
It's a great book. He's a fascinating guy. Really fascinating. But yeah, I was massively into those theatre shows. So I spent a whole year. I think I saw. There was one called Shock Horror, which was really interesting. One was called When Darkness Falls, which was a really good show, 222. There was another one, but I basically just went to see loads of theatre shows because I think that as magicians, we tend to think of magic as its own thing, when really we can take so many influences from comedians, the way that they structure stuff. If you've listened to Comedian, which is another podcast, I never knew the levels and the psychology that comedians go to put their their works together. I just think it's phenomenal. So yeah, I just always go and see theatre shows, and obviously my background's theatre. I went through uni to do theatre, so I have a decent understanding of theatre and theatrical tropes and ideas anyway. And obviously I had done the Taboo series, which is like a lecture series that I do every year. And that is basically building a show. If I'm entirely honest, I'm building a show and I'm writing a show every year with brand new tricks in it, which I've just started this year now. So I have sort of an idea of putting things together anyway, but I really love whodunits. I love an Agatha Christie because I'm old, and I love those sorts of locked room mysteries. I grew up with Jonathan Creek, massive Jonathan Creek fan. That inspired another one of my tricks called Bane, which is like a locked room mystery but live, and that's very theatrical as well. It's just a very theatrical trick. So all of those different things sort of make sense to make it a theatrical thing. So my show ended up being a one-man magical play, and the idea for me is I want an audience who don't like magic or have never seen magic to come along but still love the story and get something from it. And then if someone doesn't like theatre or stories but they love magic, then they go away loving the magic, and then anyone else will just love both aspects of it and put it all together. So that's the idea, so that an audience comes in and they get more than they bargained for. That's always my thing. So yeah, the show ended up being, I think the first year, Fun of the Fear is this really incredibly intricate story where there are 3 ghost stories essentially that happen, and then at the very end all 3 ghost stories intertwine into this ending where the audience realize they are the last character in the story. So the audience realize at that moment they are integral to what happened in this story, and that they are there for a reason and for a purpose. They find out about a bit about me, and the cool thing is with magic is we already have that confabulation ending. So imagine mixing a confabulation ending with a confabulation story ending, right, where everything comes together. So you have these wonderful moments where the tricks start to make sense, but the story starts to make sense. So the audience at the end are just like, oh my God, that's what that meant. Oh, that's what that means. Oh, that's that. And they leave the auditorium just going, and did you get that? No, I didn't get that. That now makes sense. And
So
it just means that they carry on that excitement and that journey as they leave the theatre. And it was a big lesson for me. I mean, I was really lucky to have Pete Nardi with me, like consulting through some of it. And we had the wonderful Debbie Young, whose venue it was, who sort of had some input and said, right, that needs tweaking, that needs doing it. And she was super supportive as well. And that was the first time that I realized every audience in a bizarre show is very different. And we all know that audiences are different, but I really do mean they're very different. They behave in a bizarre way. We had like the first night where they were rowdy. They were so rowdy. And it meant that I had to sort of come out of character a little bit, because obviously I'm a character in the play. But it worked to my advantage. And when we asked them after, they just said that they were scared. So their way of dealing with that scaredness was the bravado of being a little bit, yeah, come on then, mate. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was that sort of.
That's how I go into everything scary. Me at the front of a haunted attraction, like, yeah, I'll take this. And the second I get in there, I'm like, nope.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to be, especially when you've got 60 of them all coming at you in a theatre. It's full on. But they were a great crowd. They were so nice. And then the second night, no one would make eye contact with me, which is really interesting. So it's, a lot of what I do is in the audience, right? Because my job is to make them feel uncomfortable. As soon as I step off of a stage, they realize at that point that, yeah, they are in that with me, right? And they know that they're not safe anymore. So when I walk out into the audience and I have to get people up on stage, right? It's interactive show. There's lots of things that are going on. So when people are just not making eye contact with you, that makes it very difficult. And it really was a case of people were moving their entire bodies in another direction as to not make eye contact with me at that time. So it's a really interesting lesson in audience management, I think, doing a bizarre show. It's very different. And the psychology of a bizarre show, especially the one that I was doing, is really different to writing a normal show, I think, because with a bizarre show, you're having to make things seem real when they're not necessarily. Now, I know we do that in magic, but what I mean is, for example, in our show, we actually, no one's going to see it, so it's spoilers, but at the end of the show, we have an actress in the audience, and she actually sits throughout the entire show, and she's only involved in one trick, and it's the very end of the show. So the psychology there is, well, she couldn't be an actress because she's had to sit throughout the entire show. But then psychologically, I have to think about making other people seem like they're in on the show. So I have to pick certain tricks or illusions that make the audience go, it's weird that that person just did that. Are they in on it? But then you do it so many times throughout a show that they go, well, if everyone's in on it, then there's no audience.
That is not financially viable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Truman Show, basically, just of an audience. So, yeah, the psychology of building a show like that was so different. But it also meant that I got to be theatrical and write a story. And I think that's what I love about the show. And I'm so proud of the story of it. I love that people read the story, so to speak, in the show. And then when they think it back, it all starts to make sense. And it's just as impressive or interesting as the tricks in it. And the tricks are amazing. Again, Pete helped me with some of the wording of some of them, and I've got tricks in there like Pegasus page, which is a standard one, but for me the concept behind why the Pegasus page works is really interesting in our show. It makes a bit more sense, and what I really want to do one day, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to do because I don't know if I'm smart enough, is I want to turn the narrative into a novel. Which I would love to do. But there's a part in the show where basically my character says, I've never had a ghostly experience, but one thing did happen. And I don't know if it's ghost, but it's strange. And the idea is that one night I had a diary and I wrote an entry about something I thought was going to happen. And then I closed up my diary and I put it underneath my pillow one night. When I woke up, I opened up my diary and someone had torn that page out of my diary. It was no longer there. No one came into my room. No one came and got that diary. And to this day, I do not know where that page has gone. So that's the context for the Pegasus page. And that gives reason for the page to be torn from the book, etc., etc. But there's also a callback to the end because there's a box on the stage. And inside there is a page which has been torn out, which basically predicts the end of the show. And then they start to learn that my character is the psychic that I'm talking about in the show, and I had predicted the audience being involved in a catastrophe, and someone had torn that out. So everything starts to sort of combine and come together. But I thought in a novel, how good would that be? So they're reading it, and you tear a page out and stick it to the back cover or something like that, so that when they come to that page, there's one page missing, and everyone's like, what is going on in it? Oh, how annoying, there's a page missing. And then they get to the book and they realize that's part of it. And when they read that last page, which is stuck to the back, they realize that that was the page telling them the end of the story, but all the way at the beginning. But yeah, so for me, theatrically, I think it'd be great.
It's like an escape game. It's like Box One, but as a magic trick and novel. Oh, that's so good.
It would be great. I'm just not smart enough to write a novel, I don't think. But I might just put the script into ChatGPT and say, turn this into a novel. Take the script. So yeah, for me, I love theatrics. I love storytelling. I love being able to put more context to things than something quick and snappy. I love the imagination. I love allowing people to be immersed in a thing or a story, because I think the biggest tool that we have to our disposal is other people's imaginations, and we forget that so often. So yeah, a long story short, I just love storytelling. I love theatre and theatrics, so I think I'll always be writing these shows. I think they're great. They're so much fun.
How do you go about your thinking when you're obviously creating those theatrics and adding sound design and lighting and those kinds of things to really amp up the theatricality of what is essentially just a bunch of magic tricks?
Well, I think all of my lights have now changed. I think
Spooky.
There you go. It's those ghosts. That ghost called Alexa. So
You probably just triggered everybody else's devices now as well by saying that.
So for me, I think trying to get back onto my train of thought now. For me, I think I always imagine more than what I'm capable. So for me, I'm very much a blue sky thinker. So I think my ideal thing, what would it be? It would be this. And in my head, the show that I've produced is much bigger. I've got a kitchenette there with a kettle, so that the pre-show is I come on and I start making a cup of tea, and I ignore that the audience are there. And then it becomes a surprise when I turn around and they're there, I've got the projector at the back, but the projector is actually mapped to scenic parts of the stage. All of these ideas, I've got them all in my head. They're always there. And I'm overly ambitious with my thoughts. And rarely does it come off in practicality, because it's either too expensive or, just unbelievable. But the idea is to turn it into a proper touring theatre show. That's what I want to do with it eventually. But in order to do that, I need to write other parts, because we're going to need a slightly larger cast for that, etc., etc. But with this show, I started off with the venue. So it was actually the venue that I went into. It was like a circus-themed venue. It was absolutely incredible. It's such an amazing
beautiful venue. The Speedway.
It's gorgeous. So good. It's amazing. So in there, I think there's so much there to start with. And for me, I always think about the end of the show. And I don't know if other people do that, but what is this all about? What's the point of this? That's all I care about. At the end of the show, what's going to happen that's going to make the audience go,
okay, that's it. Yeah.
Something amazing has just happened. So I started with the ending, and I knew that I wanted to do a spirit cabinet routine where an audience member went in, something happened to them, and they had to be escorted out. Because the end of a bazaar show needs to unsettle an audience.
Yeah.
And again, here's something really interesting about a bazaar show is there are different expectations. So there's an expectation that the show's going to be scary. So you have to take that into consideration. If people come to a scary show and it's not scary, they're disappointed. They will walk out and go, well, yeah, it was good, but it wasn't very scary, was it?
Yeah.
So you have that expectation. You have the expectation of the magic if people are coming in for that. You have the expectation of the storytelling if people are in on that. You have the expectation of the quality of the show and the production value of the show. There's so much involved, especially when you're producing the whole thing yourself. Like the sound design, the projections, the set design, the story, the script, everything was all done from my weirdy head. So you sort of live with this idea and it develops. So for me, I started with the ending, and then I worked out, how do I make it scary? Of course, when we think about a scary theatre show, we think of Woman in Black. And then I started with the trope of the doorknob. So the idea with Woman in Black is there's a doorknob, and every time the actor walks towards the doorknob, something's either happening that's scary or is about to happen, and there's an apprehension. So then I had to think, yeah, but I don't really want to do a door handle. I don't want to copy Woman in Black, but I love that theory. And I thought about boxes, and I thought the idea that if there were loads of boxes and every time someone took a box, something happened, then people would become fearful of boxes. So if you have 100 boxes on a stage and the audience 3 boxes in realize every time they open up a box it explodes, they're going to be very scared every time you walk towards them with a box, right? So from that point, I just started developing the scariness around it. I made an animatronic doll because I love the idea of the audience having different experiences. So I didn't quite pull this off, which I'm gutted about, and I may develop it in the future. But what I wanted was the audience to walk out and everyone have a different experience.
Yeah.
It's sort of a bit like an escape room-esque thing, right? Where
you want the audience to leave being like, you saw that happen, didn't you? And they're like, no, I saw this. There's that sort of confusion of what they'd experienced.
Absolutely that, yeah. So one of the things that I did was I made this animatronic doll, which is absolutely terrifying. It's awful. And I had it on my shelf. I had to take it off eventually because I've got other weirdy stuff on there now. But she's a light moment, because in a bizarre show you have to have moments of light, you have to have comedy, because the audience are absolutely, you want them tense, you want them really involved, but you also don't want someone wetting themselves.
Yeah, you need that release of the fear, so that you can build it back up again.
Yeah, so she was there for 2 reasons: A joke, and B, to give someone an experience that's uniquely them. So the joke is, I pick up the doll, I just say absolutely nothing. I pick up the doll, I walk over to someone in the audience and I say, here, you take her. She's looking at me and she's creeping me out. I'm talking to the doll. And there's the joke. So the audience think that I'm talking about the doll, being freaky. Really, I'm talking about the audience member being freaky. And then I put the doll down in front of them, which of course gets a laugh and it freaks everyone out, which is great. And then at just a random point, either a stagehand or myself will just press a little button and that doll's head will just move a tiny bit, but enough that they're going to notice. And what's lovely is you get this moment where nothing's really happening and someone in the audience screams. Now, nothing's happening to them in terms of all the other audience, but imagine how freaky that would be if you were in a theater and just next to you someone just started screaming. It would be freaky. It would be so weird. And there's this lovely moment where all of the other audience members just look and are like, what on earth is going on over there? And it really freaks them out. So it's all of these like weird theatrical devices, and the idea of things being in the audience and the audience not being safe, and using tricks that make people look like they're in on it. And then I had to build a spirit cabinet, which was massive, but luckily fits on my back seat of my car. It folds nice and snug, but it's all made out of wood. So the whole thing is that all old aged wood. I had the curtains made in black and red velvet. So yeah, it's so much fun to do, and I loved it. I absolutely loved writing it. The problem is I just want to write another one now. That's the problem. I'm like, right, that one's done. All right, I want to start working on another one. But really,
you get those ideas and they spur other ideas that are even more ambitious, and it's just a rolling, constant like snowball effect.
Yeah. So I'll have to do like a part 2. What happens after? But yeah, until then, I'll have to keep developing and build on this one. I'm building on it now, just off of screen. I've actually got one of the props for this year that I'm working on, which is a genuine rocking chair. So it's like an old mahogany fold-up rocking chair, which I want to open the show. So I want it to start rocking on its own, basically, at the beginning of the show, with that doll on it. So the audience are just like, what the hell is going on, straight away. So yeah, there you go.
Intrigued already. Why do you think fear is such a powerful emotion to play with? I know we touched on this at the start, but why do you think it stands out so succinctly in people's minds as just being this like completely separate entity that can't be compared to. Like, you can't compare, being elated and being happy and funny with just like the full body intensity of fear.
Mm. Well, I think magicians are scared of making people scared, which I think is bizarre, because like we touched on earlier on, horror films are massive. I mean, in 2 weeks' time, I think next week, sorry, we've got Final Destination coming out. And then today I saw the trailer for the next Conjuring film.
Yep,
and I think I've just seen another one where, I don't know, I think it's kids come back and start killing people or something that disappears.
Yeah, weapons.
Yeah, there you go.
Looks great.
And we're at the beginning of the year. We're nowhere near Halloween. It's because it's a massive market. There's a huge market.
No big releases at Halloween. There's a single film coming out in October, which is wild. Like, we've got Saw 10 coming out. We've got The Conjuring, as you mentioned. Like, but they're all in the build up to Halloween. I think they're like September releases, which is crazy.
Yeah. That's it's just such a big market. And I think that we underestimate the fact that fear is fun. Fear is exciting. Fear elicits excitement. It elicits relief. It elicits laughter. It does so much. And we can really play with that. And I think fear doesn't have to be bad. People think that fear is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. People enjoy being a little bit scared. There's an excitement in that. There's an intrigue in that. It also gets people to ask questions like, are ghosts real? I mean, ghosts are something that's lasted the test of time. They were talking about it thousands of years ago, So the idea that we all have this question, you either believe, you don't believe, or you don't know whether you believe or not. But we all have that vested common interest, right? We all know that ghosts exist. We all know that there are questions about it. We've all heard ghost stories. So for me, I think it's an untapped market, first off, which is great for me because it means that I'm going to get more bookings, right? Which is perfect. I remember watching Ken Dine's Penguin lecture, funny enough, and he said something that was really interesting, and it's something that I've carried on, and it's that the audience should be just as interested as you as they are the magic. And I really enjoy the idea that the audience aren't sure where they sit with me. So I'm very approachable, I'm very bubbly, I'm very upbeat, and then I start talking about voodoo. And suddenly, how can this person who's really bubbly and really friendly start talking about black magic?
And they start questioning whether you're too friendly, like suspiciously friendly.
Exactly that, yeah. So you're raising these questions in their mind, and they put themselves into this situation where they start writing the narrative for you. And that's what I like. I love the idea that I walk away from a table at a restaurant or at a wedding, and they're not sure about the magic, but they're also not sure about me. The amount of times I have people say that I do voodoo for real, I have it a lot. I've had so many tables. Do you know what? I never get turned away from tables. The only time I get turned away from tables is if they think I'm doing something demonic or spiritual. So
a Ouija board down in the middle of a wedding, like, let's play.
Yep, literally that. Well, I don't even do that anymore. I've just got massive Ouija wedding tables that I put in before the gig. So that's the only time I ever get people turn me away from table is when they get too scared or they misconcept what I'm going to do. But right at the beginning of my table set, so I start with a card trick because let's get it out of the way. Ease them in. And then I immediately go into a trick that's about voodoo. And it's very light-hearted, and there are a couple of jokes, but I've just put that seed in. And that's all you need to do. You need a seed. And then when you end with something like PK touches at a table, they do the linking between voodoo and PK touches. You don't have to fill that gap in for them. They do it themselves. So the majority of people just think that it's some sort of weird voodoo energy thing that's happened. The amount of times people think it's hypnosis, a lot of people think it's hypnosis. So I like them filling in the gaps. I love the idea that I don't need to give them all of the information. I need to give them a bit of information, and then I let their imagination run away and do the damage. I don't need to do any of it. So yeah, I love playing with like the character and the idea of just allowing the audience to do their own expecting, I think, and expectations.
Yeah, and audience members, obviously, one of the sort of perks of Magic is it allows audience members to come out of their own experiences and just take a moment to be outside of reality. I know that's very cliche to say, but it lets them step away from their own sort of worries and quarrels. And fear really does that, because at the crux of it, you can't think of anything but what is happening in that moment, because it is life or death. And it's such a strong thing that you can play with when done correctly and appropriately.
Well, that's the thing. I think people also forget that when you're a bizarrist and you're putting together a bizarrist show, you're entering into a contract with the audience and they're entering one with you, right?
Yeah.
You are not putting them into an uncomfortable situation without them knowing that they're about to be put into an uncomfortable situation. So when they're coming to the show, they want to be scared. They want to be amazed. They want to experience these things. Like I said, one of the biggest things is people that go away and they're not scared by a show. You know, if they're expecting to be scared, then you have to give them that experience. And quite often, I know I've spoken to magicians who that freaks them out. The thought of scaring an audience, but you're not scaring an audience. You're giving an audience what they're anticipating and they're expecting. They're expecting to be scared. They're expecting to come into a ghost show. They know with a title like All the Fun of the Fear,
there's going to be fear.
There's going to be fear involved. Last year's show was called What Lies Inside, and that was about the box. So what lies inside this box? That's a trope all the way through the show, which really is a confabulation to magicians, but to an audience member, it's just an intriguing thing. But on the front cover, it's literally a woman in a theatre chair looking petrified. And I think the slogan that we put on it was, don't open the box, or never open the box. And all the way through the show, I'm saying, don't open the box, never open the box. And then at the very end of the show, a projection comes up and it just says, who's brave enough to open the box now? And then someone has to come up and open the box in order for the show to finish. So for me, yeah, just playing with fear is not something that you should be worried about, because they're anticipating it. And you know, it's so much fun. I mean, earlier on you mentioned that you're preparing for Halloween this year.
Yeah.
And I remember earlier on we spoke about Tom Bolton, who is just a lovely, lovely man. He's so nice. And he does bizarre shows at his venue, which I hope to get there one day. So there are lots of people out there, and anyone who's done a bizarre show will tell you how much fun it is. It is one of the most fun shows you will ever write and perform. There's nothing else like it, and if you haven't done it, you're missing out on a great market. Like, have a bizarre show ready to go for Halloween and start booking in a venue and start doing it. Really, it's great. Actually, no, don't, because then I get the booking.
Yeah, unless you're like above London, feel free.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you guys crack on.
Stay away from London and Newcastle/Durham, because we've got those capitalised. But anywhere else, free rent.
Actually, just anywhere outside the UK, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. Just nowhere here.
It would be an incredibly cool concept. You mentioned there, obviously, playing on the contractual obligation that the spectators are coming into it with. It would be a really fun but really horrible concept to advertise a show as something nice and fun, and then just completely flipping it on its head halfway through and it becoming this horror show would be horrendous for the people experiencing it. But my goodness, what an effect that would create, and what a storm it would create. Yeah. Whether it's for better or for worse is a different story, but would be a cool concept.
Well, I think with Bizarre Magic, there is a responsibility to make sure that the audience is safe.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the show that we wrote at the end of the first half, I I start the show by naming the fears that I'm going to highlight in the show. So they are unaware at that time that what I'm telling them is this is happening in this show.
Yeah.
And I talk about the fear of injections and needles. And at the end of the first half, I then say, does someone not have this fear? Great. Can you stand up? And then at the time we had Mark who worked there. And I said, Mark, take her out the back. And the whole audience at that point are like, what do you mean take her out the back? Like they freak out at that point. So then he takes her out and upstairs and away. And then I say, well, our friend is going to open up the second half. If you're squeamish, good luck. But for now, go and I think I say, go and consume a different kind of spirit. And don't forget, if you feel anyone touch you, tap you, or see anything move, make sure you tell me. And then I just walk away. And then she comes in and we basically do needle through arm in the second half at the beginning, because the audience are still chatting and I want them just to sit and watch something to get them back into the story, because I think that's the hardest thing, is getting them back in.
I was just about to say, how do you maintain the level of suspense that you've built whilst also giving a break in between? Because that, as a concept, to me seems wild. A lot of horror performances and like the stuff that we're thinking of doing, I can't imagine giving them the opportunity to sort of step out of that and maintaining the suspense. So I'm incredibly intrigued to hear how you maintain that.
Well, so the first thing is to remember that they are all going to talk about what happened in the first half.
Yeah.
So your interval is an opportunity for the audience to converse for the first time and to talk about their experience with each other. So unlike a 90-minute show, for example, or an hour show where you give them everything in their entirety and then they discuss it after, you're basically giving them an opportunity to dissect the first half of the show, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it allows the people that have seen something and some people that haven't to then go, but did you see that? No, I didn't see that. And it means that they're going to be more alert in the second half because they're going to be looking for those things. The other thing is I've just taken an audience member out from the theatre. So that person's family who are in the theatre, I always make sure they have family in the theatre as well, are now like, where has she gone? What is going on? A lot of people will go up to that family as well and say, so is that real? Have they just taken, is this actually part of the show? So you sort of get that conversation going straight away. And then to come into the second half, I almost force feed it to them. So I play this really loud carnivalesque music and it just comes in. So if they're at the bar or whatever, I don't care where they are. I just want them to go, Jesus, what's going on now? Yeah, literally that. And then the first thing that they see is I never go on the stage first. The spectator goes on the stage, because they don't care about me. They care about what's happened to her. So the one thing that I brief them that they're going to be fine and everything's okay. I put a bloody white towel over their arm, over their shoulder. A, because it's scary when they walk in, but B, just to protect their clothing from the fake blood that's inevitably going to spurt all over them. And then I lay another towel on the stage full of blood, and that gets laid in the interval, so that the audience are like, what is going on here? Yeah. So I'm basically drip feeding so many things that the audience are constantly worrying and talking and what's going to happen next? Where did she go? What's going to happen?
You're letting them create the suspense for themselves.
Literally that. Like I say, so I'm allowing them to play with their own imagination. I don't have to fill in all of the gaps for them. I can let their imagination start to do what they want to do. So as soon as she comes back on and this music plays, they see her walk in, they're straight back in it. Oh, that's the woman that they took off at the beginning. Yeah. What is she doing? She's got a towel full of blood over her. And I also brief them to not smile. So I say, when you walk in, please don't smile. Don't look at your family. Just stay as stony faced as you can. And luckily, everyone that we've had is so up for it. They loved it. So they walk in and they just look almost petrified or upset. So then the audience are like, oh my God, what is going on here? And that just brings the audience straight back in, because they care about her. They care about the audience member. At that point, they're more invested in her than me. So I don't have to worry about getting the audience back in on it, because they're going to do it themselves because of her.
Yeah.
So I'm just basically using her, not in a horrible way, but use her as a device to get the audience back in, because the audience care about the audience. They care about what's happening to them. They don't necessarily care about the performer at that time. And then as soon as she sits, so I also parade her around the audience with the needle to allow people to see it up close. And then I obviously remove it, and then Mark takes her out the back, cleans her up, and then she comes back on into the auditorium. And that also matters because we've had someone leave and come back in, which is going to happen to my actress at the end of the show. She's going to leave, we're going to take her out, and then we're going to put her back into the auditorium to talk to people. So there's like a matching behavior all the way through the show, so that the audience know that it's all the same and it's all happening that way. So to get them back in, just give them something to care about. As soon as the audience care about something, you don't have to do all the work. They're going to do it themselves. They're just going to re-immerse themselves. And from that point, you go straight back into the story. So for me, I think the second half of the show begins with another character that I introduce, who is John and Elena. I can't remember the last names that I gave them. They're not real, so I don't know why I'm telling them that. And then I start telling them this second story, essentially. And then, you're straight back into the show. So just give them something to care about. It doesn't have to be you. As soon as they are immersed into it, it's fine. I think 222 and other shows like that tend to use a loud noise or something to make the audience jump. And then that brings them straight back into it. But I really like Darren's philosophy of allowing them just to watch something in the second half of the show at the beginning. I think that's definitely the way I will always go forward with shows. I think it's a great philosophy. Just let them enjoy it, let them watch, and let them put themselves back into the show.
They sort of get back into it at their own pace. It allows them to get themselves involved in their own time, whether they are that engaging, whether they're finishing a conversation or whether they are coming back from the bar. It allows them to get themselves back into it without being like, I've missed something or I need to be there right now to see this happening. It gives them that time to allow themselves to fall back in. Yeah.
So when you do your show, I can't wait to see it. I hope I get to see it and
I've
see
got some ideas I'd like to discuss after this, because judging by what you've spoken about so far, I think you'd be hopefully excited by some of the concepts that we've got.
I'm sure. I love hearing what other people do as well. I really do. I love it. I love how creepy other people can be as well. It makes me feel better about myself, essentially, which is good.
Obviously, alongside the very scary theatrical performances that you do, you mentioned before that you've held magic residencies in a variety of different restaurants and venues. Obviously, with their ever-changing and adapting environments, that constantly, you don't know whether you're walking into a venue with X amount of tables. You don't know when food's going to come out. You don't know this. It's constantly changing. What are your tips for magicians that are looking to get into this kind of gig, and what sort of considerations do they have to take into account, i.e. approaching tables, dealing with hecklers, dealing with the ever-changing things?
Well, I've started doing restaurants years ago now. I think it was about 2016 or 2015, 2016 that I started doing them. And it's difficult to get your first one, I will say. It's difficult to get the first restaurant. For me, it was Wayne Goodman's Expert at the Restaurant Table book. Another book, sorry guys. But it's a fantastic tool book to give you lots of different ideas and ways to get your foot in the door. And then you'll suddenly find that as soon as your foot's in the door, other restaurants will be interested, because you sort of have that portfolio behind you going forward. So the first restaurant I worked at was one called Harper's, which I'm still there now. That's the one that I do regularly still, all of these years later, which shows you how it goes. And with them, I gave them, I basically had a pack, which Wayne talks about in his book. I won't say much more about that because that's his thing in the book. But I essentially approached these restaurants. But the first thing I did was, me and my friend Tom, we actually we just went out one night and we walked past a load of restaurants. And we wanted restaurants that were busy because we know that they are likely to have the budget to pay for an entertainer. Do they already have entertainment? Because then you've already got your foot in the door. They already know the value of entertainment at that venue. And what sort of people were eating there? Was it couples? Was it families? Was it young people? Was it old people? What sort of food did they cook there? Was it something that lots of different people are likely to go because there's different types of food? All of that sort of stuff. And then we found, I want to say maybe 4 on the same stretch of road. Then I basically just said, look, Harper's, that's gonna be the one here, because it was like Italian sort of cuisine. Yep. Really nice interior. The guys who run it were really nice guys as well. It was family run. It was packed out. Their Google reviews were great. So I gave them the pack, and then the day after they phoned me and said, hey, what's the deal with this? We've already got musicians, but we've never thought of a magician. And then I said to him, well, look, what day are you guys going to prep before dinner that your staff are in? I will come and do an hour or half an hour's performance for you and your staff. I'll show you what it's about. And then whatever you decide to do, I can come and do a night. I'll do it absolutely for free for an hour. You can see what your customers think of it. And then we'll talk past that point. And I basically put in every step that they can't really say no. As soon as you've got over one step, then
that's in the door.
You'll get to the next step. So I knew that I had to impress the staff. If I impress the staff, then they're going to let me do the hour for free. If I just went straight into the restaurant and said, I'll do an hour for free, well, they don't know if you're any good. They don't know what sort of magic you're going to do. They have to see it in person. So I can't remember what I did for their staff, but they were lovely anyway. And their staff just obviously freaked out, or like, that's incredible, really want to see that. Then the guy was like, all right, next Saturday, come in for an hour. Great, excellent. And then a lot of people at this point freak out and they're like, well, do I need to get the table to freak out and scream and talk to the management? No, just be a good magician. That's literally all you need to do. Go to the table, be a good magician, get those reactions. Then the management will see the reactions of the customers. The customers tend to say goodbye to you on the way out, even if you're doing magic to another table. As they're walking past, they'll say goodbye, and they'll make a comment like, we're not going to sleep, or that was incredible, or thank you so much, or whatever. So the management are going to see that you're going to bring value to their place. And then from that point, you can just talk about fees and what days you're going to come in on and all of that sort of good stuff. In terms of things like hecklers, I typically don't tend to get hecklers. I have had hecklers over the years. Worst one that I ever had threatened to punch me, which was really interesting. Yeah, he was doing a coin bend. I was doing coin vex to him, and he had the coin in his hand. And he just sort of went, I can't remember what he said, but he said, mate, I'll just put this in your face instead. And I was like, enjoy the rest of your meal. See you later.
Yeah,
just walked away. And that's fine, because you have to remember that a lot of the time it's not about you. It's either about a situation or alcohol. And I think in that situation, it was very much based on alcohol. I could tell that he was quite intoxicated anyway. His threat nearly wasn't real, but at the same time, I don't want to be in a situation where the alcohol does take hold, and then his making a bruise appear on my face. So I didn't want to be in that situation. But I don't typically get hecklers. If I do get a heckler, I get them on side. I don't deal with heckler put downs. I don't believe, personally, it's not my style to do a heckler put down. I believe that if you're a good performer and if you're charismatic, you'll get people on side. And I think that's the most important thing. I also think that the more you perform, and the more, actually, I spoke to our guest that was on our podcast earlier. He mentioned this as well. I think with experience, you get to judge different people and you get to adapt to different people. And the more people that you adapt to, the more you can be in those situations and it's okay because you know how to get around it. You also have to remember people are just people. They're not big scary monsters. They're not gonna come and eat you. So I think if you're charismatic and if you're just polite and you get them on side and you make them part of the magic, that's all that you really need to focus on. And then past that point, it's just about promoting it and making sure that you've got an audience there. And the interesting thing was Harper's I stopped working at for maybe 2 years. And then I was doing another couple of restaurants who opened up a chain. So I was doing some of their restaurants, a couple of them. And I went back there like last year, I think, last summer. And really, really bizarre. I went in from 1 till 4. So that was my shift, 1 till 4. And then I had a phone call the day before being like, can you do a bit longer? I was like, yeah, of course I can do a little bit longer. He said, yeah, we're overbooked. I was like, okay, what, you want me till 5? He's like, well, 9 would be great if that's all right. So I ended up doing 1 till 9 that week, which was hardcore. And the vast majority of the people, not everyone, the vast majority of people were there for magic. So I didn't have a break. It was just 1 till 9 full on. And that's been the same ever since. So now I do about 1 to 7 or 8. They do 3 to 4 dinner services. All of them are packed, absolutely packed, except last one. Last one was really quiet. It was marathon day. That it was dead. It was the most dead that it's been there for me. But every other weekend, I spoke to the general manager there, and he said normally we send out an email, and all of the orders just come straight in. He said they'll sit there and they'll just watch all of the orders in. So that's a great thing for me because it's 10 minutes from my house. Perfect. It also means that it's going to generate local gigs, which means I will get more gigs where I don't have to travel far. And I'm more likely to get those gigs locally because people aren't necessarily traveling from really, really far away. So it's a great thing to do. I think every magician should try it because it really gets your chops. It teaches you so much in terms of adapting to different types of people. You have to deal with kids, you have to deal with older people, have to deal with teenagers, groups of lads, groups of girls, anything you can think of you'll have. I've had church groups that have been in restaurants and I've done stuff to. I had just before the pandemic a massive table of like nurses and doctors. Anyone you can think of you'll end up performing for. So it's a great way to get your chops and to really hone your material. Like PK touches, honestly, every table for like 6 years. Yeah, it's a great thing to do. Everyone should try it. It's good fun.
There's been so much to unpack in the time that we spent here, and honestly, I could sit and talk for even longer. We're currently at 2.5 hours in. It's probably going to be the longest episode
I'm
so far.
Sorry, everyone. That's terrible, isn't it? The funny thing is, I hate talking about myself. I feel so uncomfortable about it, but I do like talking about the things that I'm interested in. And that's the thing, because we get to talk about, like, even before, people won't know this, but we're on a call for an hour before we went live, before we started recording. And that's because, we get to talk about like bizarre shows and stuff like that and theatrics. And we were actually talking about escape rooms for loads of time before, which we both have a vested interest in. So yeah, it's weird talking about stuff. I get massive. One thing I really suffer with, even all these years later, is imposter syndrome. So if you ever see me in a room with magicians, I will always be the one. I will not approach anyone. I will not say anything to anyone, because in my head, I'm like, well, why does anyone care about what I have to say?
Yeah.
I'm a nobody in this room. And that's what, when I spoke to you earlier on, I spoke about one of our guests who had, like, for me, I was like, oh, wow, he's doing incredible things. He's doing this, that, and the other. And he was like, oh, well, I've seen all of your taboo series and I've seen this, that, and the other. And it's those moments where you go, oh my God, yeah, we put stuff out online and you don't get to see anything beyond the screen. So when you're doing this podcast now, you don't see anything when this episode goes out. It's just sort of done and it goes.
Yeah.
And it's only going to be one day when someone comes up to you and says, oh my God, I listened to the podcast. Alex McAleer, that was so good. Well done for getting him on the podcast. That's the only time that you get feedback that you realize, oh my God, I'm putting something out and people are actually listening.
People are actually listening.
Yeah, so it's a really weird thing when you live your life online. Imagine oh my God, could you imagine like the big influencers and stuff like that? It must be terrible for them. Like they just pump out stuff. And then, yeah, it's just terrible. So yeah, I do apologize that it's been 2.5 hours, guys.
Hey,
but
it's been the fastest 2.5 hours of recording I've ever done across this podcast and other podcasts. So it's been thoroughly enjoyable. I'm going to quickly wrap this up and flip the tables on you. And I'm going to ask in a quick fire sense, we're not going to ask for any sort of expansion on this. What are you taking on your desert island?
You see, now this is going to be a future episode of Desert Island Trips.
Oh, okay.
So I cannot.
Let's not spoil that then.
I cannot say. The only thing I'll say is one of my choices I've spoken about on the air, and it would probably be my number one choice as well. So I have spoken about it on the podcast, but it's down to you to work out what it is. I think it's fairly evident, but
what a perfect way to tease the ending of the episode.
Yep, yeah.
It perfectly goes on to what are your plans for the future? What do you have in the works? Obviously, you've mentioned the Taboo series that you started working on already. You got the shows coming up. What are we expecting?
So I think the main aim for me is, so we missed Taboos last year. So if anyone doesn't know what Taboos is, it's basically a yearly lecture that I've done for 8 years now, which is mental. And it's at the Alakazam Academy. So although I'm saying that, this was before I worked for them, so it's not a South thing. But it was literally this thing that ended up being like this weird little phenomenon, because people would look forward to doing it each year, and it became one of the best-selling academies every year. And it's a pain for me to do. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say they're easy to do.
It's like writing an entirely new show with entirely new tricks every single year. It's difficult.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's a nightmare. But it's so much fun. I love it. I absolutely love it. And then last year, the show just took over, and I couldn't do the academy and the show at the same time. It just wasn't feasible to do it. So this year I was gutted. I missed it last year. I was so upset. So this year I started writing this year's one. I've already got the first story. I've already got the first trick, which I've already told you about on this podcast. So you have to work that one out.
The teasers.
Yeah, that's already on there. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to do that, because I really, really missed it last year. It's such a fun day. We've actually got Terry Tyson coming over next week, and he's doing an academy. So it's going to feel like an early Halloween. I'm very excited for it. So there's that. Obviously, the show, the idea with the show is to rewrite it a little bit. And I want to add in several other actors and performers so that we can scale up the show to take it to small theatres. So my aim with that is I would love to be able to get some sort of budget behind it other than my own, because it's very expensive at this point. It's costing a fortune to scale it up and to take it on a tour. That's what I would love to do, because I do think it has the capability to do that. And I've been very, very lucky to have some lovely comments from people who have literally just said, it's pretty much ready to tour at this point. So I would love to get to a stage to do that. God knows how to do that, but
there's the space in the market as well. There. Obviously, we've mentioned the likes of 222, Woman in Black, Ghost Stories. But other than that, there's maybe 3, 4, 5 things across the whole of theatre in like the horror and bizarre genre, which is wild because the concept is sensational and the fact that it's not been explored more is absurd.
Yeah. They're so much fun to watch as well. If anyone hasn't seen it, there's a couple of plays. I know Croft is touring at the moment across the UK, which is like a ghost story play. I think there's a Morse, as in Inspector Morse, ghost play, which is touring down the UK at the moment. So there are a few ghost plays. If you've never seen one, go and see them. They're brilliant. And there are so many magic adjacent things with how they're structured. They're structured in a way where, I mean, Agatha Christie, not last year, the year before, we went to go and see And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And if anyone doesn't know that, it is literally, they are telling you what's happening as it's happening, and you still don't know it's happening until the very end. It's very, very clever. But any sort of whodunits and stuff like that, they're really good to go and watch. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that there is definitely room for this sort of show. I think arguably it's not been done before in the way that this show's been written, because it's a very, I don't know, it's just very different. It's almost like a person narrating their experiences, and these magic happenings are happening around them. And
it borders immersive more so than like magic show. It's slowly sort of blending into that world as well.
Yeah. And if it was me, and like I said, I had the budget, it would be much more immersive.
Yeah.
I know there's a great show in Salem in America, and he's great at building animatronics. And in his show, everything in the room is rigged to move in some way. But I mean, like hydraulic level of movement. It's incredible. I remember seeing a chest of drawers, and all of the drawers just start moving and shaking, and then it just stops again, which is excellent. So yeah, that sort of stuff is the idea. It would be great to really frighten an audience, especially with the ability to put not explosive devices. That sounds horrendous.
Wow. This took a turn.
It did take a turn. What would the right term be? Things that go bang. There you go. Like noisemakers and stuff like that. To put them around an auditorium for the end of the show and have them all go off at the same time would be, that'd be so good. That would be phenomenal. It's always about the end of the show. It has to be scary. It always has to be scary. So yeah, for me, it would be that. Taboos. I've got products which I'm still producing, so I now self-produce tricks as well as with other companies as well. So I've got one which arrives in 2 weeks. I'm very excited, called Afterlife, which is a very creepy story about I can't remember her name now. She was a psychic in another country, and she had this creepy doll. And the way that she would contact the spirits is she would look at the face of the doll, and she used to report that the face of the doll would morph or change into the face of the person who had passed on. And then she would start recounting things about this person by looking at the doll. I don't know if that's accurate or true, mainly because
I don't know whether to believe what you're saying or if it's just another false thing that you're so confidently putting across that I'm just like, oh yeah, of course, that sounds about right.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fake. So yeah, no, that's just a story that I wrote for the thing, but that's the concept behind it. And then it has these really nice Polaroid, but mini Polaroids.
Okay.
Because I've done quite a bit with Polaroids lately. I'm obsessed with Polaroids at the moment. So yeah, that is that one. But other than that, yeah, just trying to lecture a bit more. I started doing my lecture 2 years ago called Step Into the Bizarre, so it's an entirely bizarre lecture. And if you're in the UK, I actually bring the spirit cabinet to the venue, set it up for you so that you can sit in it, and we try and perform it with someone if they are willing to get inside it. So you can see how it's actually constructed, because building a spirit cabinet is not an easy feat. And a lot of the literature that's out there is either incomplete or very complicated, we'll put it that way. So the version that I built was taken from a book called Magic Circle Magic, And again, it was very incomplete in the book. So I had to take the idea from that and then build on top of it, and then find a way for it to flat pack into my car. So this whole thing fits inside this case, which just sits on my back seat. But I do bring that along. So if you're in the UK, I always bring that along if you want it. You don't have to have it if you don't have the space, but people enjoy sitting in it and checking it out. And a lot of people will never sit inside a spirit cabinet in their lives. Probably rightly so. So
for good reason.
Yeah, for good reason. So that's it pretty much. And then, of course, carrying on with Alakazam, we've got loads of stuff coming out with Alakazam for Halloween as well. So anyone that likes Halloween stuff, we've got some really good tricks coming out. And that pretty much takes up all of my time. Alakazam is obviously my main job. So I'm working Monday to Friday, all day, every day for them, doing their like editing their videos, filming their social like YouTube videos, review shows and stuff like that, doing their trailers. We were filming 2 days ago for a new trailer, which is going to be one of the strangest magic trailers ever put out there, but it was so much fun to do. We do not mind. It's very funny and it's very silly. So yeah, just Alakazam, obviously doing the podcast. Desert Island Tricks takes up quite a lot of time. As you're aware, when you edit this, I feel so sorry for you. Editing long podcasts takes hours and hours and hours. I think the Darren one, because we did it in 2 parts, I think that was originally like 3 hours or something like that. That took so long to edit.
Imagine a podcast being nigh on 3 hours.
Yep, imagine that. Good luck. Yeah, rather you than me. But I do feel your pain. I have been where you are every day. But you're also a test. It's amazing to be able to do, to be able to talk to so many incredible performers that I would never have the chance to talk to. And even being a guest, I know we've crossed paths at Blackpool, but I would never have got the chance to talk to you had this have not been a thing. Likely. So yeah, it's a great thing to be able to do podcasts, and I will be an avid listener, not of this one, because it will make me cringe if I listen to it back. I will cringe so bad at so many stages. So that's I'm one of them people. As soon as it's out, I'll never watch it again. I'll never listen to myself again. It will be gone for forever.
Well, it'll be for the listeners to get in contact with you and be like, yeah, you're right, it was cringy as hell.
Yeah, it was cringe, yeah. Cringe comments below. Give us your top 3 cringe moments from this podcast. List them below. Your Desert Island cringes. There you go. Goodness. Spin-off podcast. That would be great, wouldn't it? But yeah, so thank you for having me on. And I hope that it goes from strength to strength.
An absolute pleasure. Even just speaking from what I've attained from this, it's been absolutely incredible. It's been so insightful, and hopefully the people listening also take something away from this, and it's not just 3 hours of us geeking out about the things that we enjoy.
Well, should I give your... I'm taking over your podcast now. So I'll give your guys, your listeners, a task, right? Okay. Just to make this interesting, right? So earlier on, we mentioned... I did this in one of my email shout-outs a few weeks ago, and I got some really good responses. Earlier on, we spoke about soft rock, and you told me your soft rock was someone pushing their hand into your back and stopping you from falling. My soft rock was the footsteps in the Abbey. So if anyone's listening to this, go to the YouTube version of this if you're listening to it audibly. And underneath, if you have a soft rock, which everyone does, tell us your soft rock. Obviously, you don't have to type an entire paragraph, but right underneath your soft rock, it would be so interesting to see what the impossible thing is that they can't explain is. I reckon you'll have some amazing responses. I think a lot of us have some weird ideas and thoughts. But I had a couple of people message me on Facebook and through email, and they had some really interesting soft rocks that were mostly ghost related. So there you go.
I'm incredibly intrigued to see what comes up. Please do. Please comment on it. I might even turn this into a social media post so that we can get people involved on their socials as well. But please let us know what weird and wonderful things you've experienced. One final thing, where can our listeners find you, Jamie? Not specifically in the UK, like socials and stuff.
Where can they find me? So website, just my name, Jamie Daws at UK. Obviously, social media at Jamie Daws Magic. I think I've got Facebook at Jamie Daws Magic. And then obviously podcasts. You can listen to Alakazam Magic's podcast, which is Desert Island Tricks, which I host. We have lots of really incredible guests. We've been very, very fortunate with who we've had. Had the likes of Darren, of course, which was amazing. We had Bill Abbott, which was amazing as well. Andy Nyman, Preston Nyman, Simon Lipkin, Adam Dadswell. You name it, we've had them. And we've got some amazing guests coming up. Like really pretty amazing guests.
That's that you're about to slip up and drop one there. Ooh.
Yeah, no, I can't say.
Peter Nardi's off screen with a
a
gun held there.
See, normally I would tease them if they're recorded, but these people are booked in but not recorded. So until they're recorded, I cannot say. We recorded today's one, which was Luch, so his is in the bag, and that was a really good, interesting podcast. Which, yeah, I really, really enjoyed. Well, I didn't because it cost me £100 in books. But yeah, we got some great podcasts. So there, of course, do check out Alakazam. I work for them now, but they're a great magic company in the UK. They're also in America now as well. And, you know, things like the podcast, the social videos, if anyone's seen them, we've got the ACT and the review show. These all take an incredible amount of time and effort. This is nighttime.
Wow.
Yeah,
real
it literally doesn't stop, does it? It doesn't stop. So it's just really dark now. Wait there, if I go
really screwed you up.
Alexa, turn on main light. There we go. We have
everybody's house is going to have lit up, right?
That's it. They're all going. We do not know main light. So yeah, they have a store in America now as well, and all of these things that we put out, you know, take an incredible amount of time, and that's only because Pete and the team at Alakazam just want to make an amazing community. You yourself know how much effort podcasts take. We don't get any financial gain out of that. You know, it's just about making a wicked podcast that the community enjoy and that we can all geek over because we're all nerds. Some of us more than others.
Evidently 3 hours into this.
Yeah. So yeah, do go check them out there. It's a great company, and they have so many cool things coming up. Very cool things coming up.
All linked in the show notes below. Woo-hoo. Definitely do go check it out, go support it, go see Jamie's shows. They're absolutely phenomenal. Check out Terrifying Taboos because it's a phenomenal series, and if you're looking to get into bizarre stuff, it is like the Bible of bizarre stuff. So definitely check it out. If you have enjoyed the episode, let us know. Leave a 5-star review, drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we shall catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.